And for our opening exercises, could the recorder please call the roll?
Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Councillor Bennett, absent. Councillor Anderson.
I am here.
Councillor Nanki.
Here.
Councillor McCoy.
Present.
Councillor Dickey.
Here.
Councillor Benjamin.
Here.
Councillor Benars.
Here.
Councillor Lewis.
Here.
Thank you. All right, we have we have two items for our attention this evening, and I would ask Councillor McCoy, let's see, to do a, no, we don't need a motion on additions and deletions, right? We have none for this.
Work session.
Okay, cross that out.
Let's roll up our sleeves and
That's right. I draw your attention to information reports that are in your council agenda, and the first item has to do with the appointment to the Citizen Budget Committee, and we're very pleased to have our candidate here so that we can discuss the position with her, and she is Vanessa Nordyke. She's a lawyer in Salem with the Department of Justice. And so, Vanessa, if you would like to be seated over there, I apologize for pointing and not having told you this earlier. So that's, yes, thank you. We'll get you set up there.
Set up. Bam.
So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're absolutely very welcome. We're delighted that you're here. We're delighted to have this opportunity to talk with you about the Budget Committee and the work of the Budget Committee and the role of individual members on our Budget Committee. It is a position that we take very seriously, and we work very closely with the Budget Committee community members. We work as actually a team of 18 when it comes time for the budget meetings. So it's an important collaborative effort. So we're going to start. I'm going to ask if you would like to introduce yourself and tell us just very briefly about yourself, and then we do have a set of, these are not interrogatories, I promise, and we're not hard-nosed. We're a very pleasant group of people. But if you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit, and that sort of goes to question number one, but just give us a brief introduction about yourself.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I am getting over a cold, so I apologize if I cough or my voice gets a little gravelly. Thankfully, city staff have already supplied me with water.
Good.
So thank you so much. My name is Vanessa Nordyke. I was born and raised in Salem, and I'm a third-generation Salem lawyer. I work at the Oregon Department of Justice, and I've been there for about 8 years. I live at home with my boyfriend, our dog, and our recently acquired 8-week-old puppy, who will hopefully one day be our hunting companion. So that tells you a little bit about what we like to do in our spare time, plus a lot of other great outdoor activities. I've been a proud member of Salem for many years, and one of my very first volunteer opportunities was with the Salem Youth Advisory Commission when I was a teenager. I have a passion for public service. It's demonstrated in my resume and my materials, but I have a commitment to service. And in terms of volunteering for the Budget Committee, I know that a budget translates an organization's intentions into actions. So this is a critically important committee. I am thrilled at the prospect of potentially joining this committee, and I look forward to your questions today.
Great, thank you. Councillor Anderson, I'm sorry I didn't mean to actually steal part of your question.
No, that's all right, Mayor.
I'm sure you can ad-lib from there.
I'm sure I can. And first of all, welcome as a fellow member of the Oregon State Bar. And please disregard my comments about cross-examination you heard me say earlier to the city attorney. I was mentioning I've been in depositions of doctors all day today, so that's my mode. But fortunately, they wrote the question for me, so I'm going to ask it, and it's pretty much what the mayor asked, but I guess a second one, why are you interested in serving as a member of the Budget Committee? And then, second question, which I am ad-libbing, I'm wondering if, as a lawyer, if you could speak a bit to process and how that might be important in the Budget Committee and its deliberations. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Counselor. So my interest in the Budget Committee comes from the fact that I've served as a treasurer of a past charitable organization, and one of my fond memories from that board was we would spend time in our board meetings talking about our hopes and our dreams for our organization. What can we do to ensure that we are carrying out our core services that our members have come to expect in exchange for their membership dues? And what more can we do to build? But invariably, the board would turn to me and say, Treasurer, what can we actually do? And so I think that even though that organization's budget is but a kernel of the budget that the city of Salem has, the same principles apply. And I know that this is an organization where I can make a difference, and I want to make a difference, and that is why I have applied for this one specifically. I should also add that I have served on, I guess, 3 other City of Salem committees, the Youth Commission that I mentioned, but also the Community Police Review Board and the City of Salem Social Services Advisory Board, which has since merged with another organization. So another factor is one that I think a lot of people can often take for granted, but I had great experiences with city staff. I know that when you've got great staff liaisons, they can make a big difference in making everything just teed up for the meetings, having the presentations ready to go, having witnesses or other interested constituents show up ready to participate. So I feel like I will come into this organization getting the same high level of support that I received in my 3 past experiences with the City of Salem. Now, in terms of process, as a government worker, as a lawyer, I believe strongly in transparency. I believe strongly in making sure that everyone feels that their voice is heard. That doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Doesn't mean you have to adopt whatever that person may recommend, because a lot of times the real meat of the work happens in committees. You're the folks who are expected to pour over hundreds of pages of materials. You're the folks who are expected to be impartial. You're the ones who are expected to listen, but to ultimately make a decision. And so I have a lot of experience of that from a lot of the previous organizations I've served on. I do currently, in fact, serve on a board that has 19 members. So mostly lawyers, I might add.
Long meeting.
Right. I think I should get some bonus points for that one. So, but we also have some very dedicated members of the public, too. And, I know that the process is very important, but really making sure that everyone feels that the process has been observed, the rules have been followed and applied in a fair and impartial manner. You can disagree with outcomes. My opponents do all the time.
Yeah.
But that's the way it goes.
Thank you very much. It's a total irrelevant aside question, but that won't stop me from answering it. As your 3rd generation Salem lawyer, are you connected somehow to the drive-through law office that used to be there by the men's clothing store in the bottom of the prettiest building in Eugene?
Absolutely. That was...
Salem, whoops, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew what he was getting at. Absolutely. No, that is my dad's drive-through office. He has since adjourned to, shall we say, more discreet office setting. And thank you for mentioning that now and not when I was in law school.
Nice.
Counselor Nanke, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I was thrilled to hear regarding the Salem Youth Advisory Commission. I was a liaison to that for many years before it went away. It'd really be nice to bring something like that back into play, because I know a lot of times when we go to national conferences and what have you, a lot of the other cities in Oregon bring their youth delegations. And maybe we can talk about that at a budget committee meeting. That being said, what is your understanding of the role of a budget committee member?
So the budget committee is composed of volunteers from the community as well as several members of the city council. You have a budget, I can't remember her precise title. Kelly Jacobs, is it budget officer?
She's the one that set up the microphone for you.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. So, yes, haven't put a face to the name with everyone just yet. We've corresponded over email. And I understand that the meetings are held, March or April to May-ish, somewhere in that time frame, to get the budget ready to go before the end of the fiscal year in the summertime, so just before July 1. So that's my understanding, that we review a lot of records. There'll be a lot of numbers presented. There'll be some testimony from folks. And that is my general sense of it. I talked with a sitting member, Jose Gonzalez, about it, and just about I think when I applied, which was a little while ago, and so I don't remember all the details from my conversation with him, but that was my general gist of it.
And we do have quarterly ones as well, so you'll pop one here or there during the course of the year as well. Other than that, I like your resume as far as just the number of volunteer hours you have in there, so
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, Councilor McGoy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for applying.
Thank you.
I think you've sort of answered this question. It's in your previous work on volunteer boards or committees, what strengths have you brought to the group, and how will those strengths translate as a member of the Salem Budget Committee?
Thank you. So one of the things that I think I can touch a little bit more on is when I served with the Salem Social Services Advisory Board, I became chair during that organization. When it was in a period of transition, there were some folks who didn't agree with each other, and I have no problem disagreeing with people, frankly. It's what we do for a living. But there's a right way and a wrong way of doing that. And so one of my strengths, which comes not just from serving on a lot of boards, whether they're with the city, whether they're at the state level, or just the private sector nonprofit arena, I feel comfortable discussing options with people, recognizing the fact that we may not agree at the end of the day, but we will respect the process and how we got there. And currently, in one of the boards that I serve on right now at the Oregon State Bar Board of Governors, it's the 19-member board I mentioned earlier, my tendency is to listen to both sides, or multiple sides if there's multiple lawyers involved. There's often multiple sides involved. And I'm usually one of the last ones to talk, because I try to come, even though I read up, do my homework, I like to come to meetings usually not totally with my mind made up, because there's so many times when one of my colleagues will think of something that I hadn't thought of. And so I like to be prepared for those contingencies, because the goal is to find the right decision, not always the popular decision.
Good. Well, as a veteran of 35 years in politics in this state, that's nice to hear. That's the way it used to be, not the way it always is nowadays. A second follow-up on my ad lib question, to a degree, how would you describe your philosophy as it applies to a budget, your approach to fiscal budgeting and that whole deal?
Well, keep it in the black would be nice. You have to triage. You know, as a government employee, I know what it's like to have statutory, regulatory, and constitutional strictures on what you can and cannot do. There are certain things that the city of Salem must provide. You must provide public safety. You must provide these utilities. You must have a plan to address water, stormwater, wastewater, et cetera. We must have roads. So when it comes to making budgetary decisions, priorities are everything. Priorities should follow where the dollars are. And you have to always remember that you have a core mission, and make sure that you have accounted for the things that you must have. You must have safe, clean water, safe streets. You must have all of those essentials taken care of, and then extrapolate from that point forward, because there are just some certain basic measures to which the city is entrusted. And so it really is of vital importance.
Great. Thank you. Great answer.
Thank you.
All right, so hi, and once again, thank you so much for applying. I appreciate that. I think I've seen you when we've interviewed for other boards and commissions, so it's nice to see you back. So can you describe your experience with public budgeting and policy-driven financial decisions?
Okay, so I'm a little bittersweet about that because as a government employee, I know what it's like to have gone through times when my departments had their budgets cut. I've gone through times where we've had layoffs and salary freezes, hiring freezes. And so, I've seen what those austerity measures can do. And so I know that if the city of Salem is looking at tough decisions, being able to address those tough decisions with empathy and compassion is very helpful. In terms of policy-driven budgetary decision-making, that's something that I think touches every single board that I've served on, because we're always looking at, okay, here's what we want to do, but what can we actually do? What do we actually have in our budget? Can we rearrange some things? Should we rearrange some things? What will be the costs if we decide to divert resources? And so those are decisions that come up whether you're a household of one or a Fortune 500 company. And so budgetary decisions are a part of the board meetings that I go to on a monthly basis for the Oregon State Bar. We have a $16 million budget, about 100 plus employees. We don't run the day-to-day finances, but we provide the long-term vision planning for the Oregon State Bar, all 15,000 plus lawyers and judges. And we look at a lot of vision planning in terms of where do we see the legal profession heading? How can we ensure that we're protecting the public? So those are decisions that we deliberate on with regularity.
Thank you. That's great. I know it is not uncommon at all for us to have things come up during the budget cycle that's like, oh, the council should have a policy for that. Maybe we shouldn't be, using the budget to make council policy. So it's very common, and it sounds like that's something that you've done on the board that you're on as well. So that's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, welcome thank you for taking the time. Question would be, what are the advantages of a local government budget process that includes citizen involvement?
Well, I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier, in that you have to make sure that people's voices are heard. And making sure that folks have an opportunity to speak is important. It's also, again, as I mentioned, it's why I like having public members on the Oregon State Bar BOG, as we call it, because a lot of times they come up with something that, gosh, you can get so kind of lost in the weeds on little details that you forget, wait a minute, how do the non-lawyers perceive this change? When we talk about the ethical rules that we want lawyers, when we talk about decisions like, for instance, is this lawyer needing to be disciplined, for instance? It's so important that we have non-lawyers weigh in. Basically, the more important the task, the more important input becomes. It helps to, in my opinion, to set out a framework so that you've planned ahead. So that, for instance, we wanted to make a change to a certain policy that would affect all the lawyers in the state. So we made sure to post on the website, publish it in our bulletin that comes out monthly. And we went above and beyond that too. We scheduled teleconferences so that any one lawyer from around the state, whether they're in a rural part of the state, which is a huge consideration of ours, is how do we communicate with people who don't have internet, who live out in the sticks, who don't have ready access to a car? How do we ensure that these folks are still informed and made aware of potential changes and given an opportunity to provide their input? Again, what you do with that input is up to you. That is why decisions, again, I feel, are often entrusted at the committee level, because those are the folks who have the time, who have pledged to make the time to sit in, do all your homework, Ask the questions of city staff if you don't understand. I can't tell you how many times I've talked with my bar staff because, you know, it's a big world. Let's just leave it at that. So I think input is important, but it should be done so in a structured format so that there's still, you know, it's not a free-for-all at the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa, for coming here tonight and yet again stepping up to volunteer for our community. First off, I wanted to apologize for, we were having our meal while you're giving an interview, and if we didn't eat now, we wouldn't have dinner at all today, so this is one chance. Really is, you mentioned the weeds, and I like that because that is a big part. You're going to get your tome, there's going to be several tomes that you're going to have, and there's a lot of weed in there that you're going to want to go through, but
Right.
you're told really you're not supposed to. We have a program-based budgeting that elevates the budget discussion from the weeds on all line item details. What are the possible advantages that you see of a program-based budget discussion?
Can you say that last
What are the possible advantages of a program-based discussion as opposed to a line item discussion?
Oh, okay, I understand. Well, one of the first advantages is that you won't be there. You can still keep a day job that way, because otherwise you will be there for hours. Line by line is for hours. And, you know, there is a difference between, you know, being on a governing body where, you know, as I said, I don't currently oversee the day-to-day operations at the Oregon State Bar. That is not why they elected me to that position. They elected me, and even though I get a 100-page financial outline every month detailing, okay, this is where we are this month, that I'm not expected to go line by line over the 100 pages, which, by the way, that's just for the budget. That's not for the other documents on our docket, right? So I absolutely recognize how important it is to have things at a higher level. And you don't, and sometimes I notice some organizations, and a lot of this has to do with time management for organization, how well the leadership does at managing conversations. But I have been in meetings over the last, 10 years that I've been very involved in local boards, that sometimes people will get really caught up in the line item, and they'll forget the fact that, no, we have a larger mission. Why are we arguing over this $1,000 expenditure? I think we can delegate that to the executive director. I think she can. I think she's got this. So you have to make a balancing act, really. There's oversight, and yet you want to ask questions when you have them, and don't be afraid to raise your hand and say, I'm sorry, I don't get it. Why are we voting on this? That's important. But you also have to manage your time, budget it out. And that's that's why one of the first things I looked at when I looked at this board was, okay, when do you guys actually meet? Because if you're meeting in April and May, that's fine. Right now, that's fine. So
I understand, and that's why we have city staff, is to help us figure out what are those line items we don't need to get down there. I had one small follow-up question, and that had to be 50,000 lawyers and judges in the state of Oregon?
15,000.
15,000.
Oh, no.
I was
not that
worried there
many.
for a moment.
There'd be a lot more lawsuits over the case.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for taking your time here.
Good evening, Ms. Nordick. I too appreciate your willingness to serve. You had mentioned that you have a passion for public service. And I mean this in the most joking way, I guess. It looks more like an addiction. One of the things that struck me was your comment, I want to serve on the Citizens Budget Committee because I recognize the vital importance of having a strong, healthy financial structure for carrying out the city's core functions and services. So from your perception, what are those core functions and services?
Public safety and utilities are two of the most important functions. You have to have a safe, you cannot have crime-free. It's impossible to be crime-free. But you have to have a safe community, one where children can walk home safely, one where businesses can open, and so on and so forth. So public safety is key. So, fire, police, that sort of thing. all the various community policing, the school resource officers are vitally important. You can really start drilling down to public safety. It's more than just uniformed officers, but that's certainly a part of it. And utilities, you have to have clean, safe water. You have to have utilities that work and work reliably. So I would say those are the two core services that come to my mind. There's a lot more to it than that, obviously, that the city does. But, I mean, those are very important.
Okay, thank you.
It's now my turn.
Uh-oh. Bringing out the
I
big
saved
guns.
myself for last. So the question that I have for you is, how do you think Salem could effectively invite residents to help us solve the budgetary challenges that we often face here at the city?
Okay. Well, the first thing folks can do is educate themselves. The city has a wealth of information posted online. If you can't make the council meetings are streamed online. The 5-year forecast is online. I mean, there is such a wealth of information. So the first thing people can do is to take it upon themselves to get to know a little bit about the city and the various requirements that the city must undertake. Citizens also need to understand that just because you have a total budget doesn't mean that all of those dollars are available for any purpose. HUD dollars are for housing. Transportation dollars are for transportation, and so on and so forth. They're very, you know, again, coming back to my legal background, I mean, I know that a lot of times the dollars that the city receives, whether it's from the feds, the state, grants, et cetera, they all come with strings attached. And, you know, a lot of folks, if you're not volunteering, if you're not reading the paper, if you're not educating yourself with the wealth of information that the city makes freely available to folks, then I think that's where you should start. And then have a conversation with your elected official, participate in the process when you can. A lot of folks, they just want to raise their families. They just want to do their jobs. And that's why we elect folks who have, again, made the pledge to serve, addiction or otherwise.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there other questions that have occurred to any of the counselors that you'd like to have a chance to talk with Vanessa about tonight? All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming and having this time with us, this conversation. And we actually have an agenda item on the City Council agenda to actually formalize the appointment process. So at this point, you're welcome to stay and observe the rest of the evening, or perhaps maybe you'd rather exit and spend the evening elsewhere.
Did I mention the 8-week-old puppy?
Yes, I did. I was just thinking of the puppy. Okay. Oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much. The next item that we're going to address during our work session will be presented by staff, and this has to do with our community-focused website redesign. And I see that Krishna Nambiri is here and others. So Krishna, I'll let you introduce the program for us. Thank you.
So before we start, I do apologize. There was a technical issue with uploading the document, so we do have a hard copy for you guys.
Okay.
It was a.
Oh, thank you. I think I have it.
Yeah. Well, I'll take the responsibility for it.
Okay.
It should be the same, but we weren't sure. We wanted to make sure to cover it.
Well, good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm Krishna Namburi, IT Director. With me here, I have the core project team members, and Laura Singer and Courtney Knox. And Vlad Putintsev, David Stoddard, and Kathy Knock are not here today. Okay. So I am here today to give you an update on the community-centric website redesign project. And before I begin, I do want to thank the core project team members who are here today, and as well as the other three, for their dedication and their leadership to take this project forward. All right, so why are we redesigning our site? Community's first impression on our business is based on the website. And City of Salem, from City of Salem, many efforts are in progress to make sure we are giving that timely communication, and as well as for the community engagement. So we recently finished the community survey for strategic communication, and the data validates that the city website is the top resource for information. So when we look at our existing website content, it is department-centric. And even though we are using the website to communicate with the community, because of the way the content is structured, it's not being used as effective messaging tool. And we have many authors who write the content. And we do have a review process, but it's not consistent. And right now we don't have a strategy on how to deploy our priority content on our website. So our goals for the project, to make it community-centric. So in order to do that, that consistent messaging is important piece, and the focus for this project has been to give that consistent messaging from the city. And as we deploy technical solutions, we need to continue to work on reducing that long-term cost of ownership on our systems. And the goal for this project is also to give staff and as well as organizational efficiencies. So when we talk about sustainability, as an IT department, we can provide the technical solution, but the challenge is to sustain that change. And in order to do that, it was important for us to collaborate with other departments and also provide a solution that has a vision and as well as sustainability. So the core principles we base the design on is, number one, these are the 7 principles that we followed. Easy to browse, that means we can find the information from different places and the same information. And it's easy to find information that you're looking for within 2 to 3 clicks. And the website is going to be action-oriented with features, the visible features, and the content is going to be relevant with quality and accuracy and as well as up-to-date information. So the consistent messaging is one voice, one meaning, and one purpose. And of course, we want our website to be mobile-friendly and accessible to all. So our strategy has been, we wanted to learn from others. So we looked at several award-winning websites. And some cities actually have truly done the community-centric website designed for the entire site. But some have decided to go with partial implementation just for the homepage. What we have decided to do is to design our entire website to make it community-centric. Not only change the design of our website, but as well as to rewrite the content. So, and then we decided to do that, and we decided to build this product in-house. The reason for us to go in-house, like there are 3 of them. Number 1 is financial. Number 2 is cultural shift. Number 2 is sustainability. In order to get that cultural shift and then sustain that, it was important that we engage staff at different levels of the organization. And also, we had to be flexible with our approach so that we can create that shift and as well as give that room for growth. So just to kind of give you an example, if you want to find parking information, and how does it work with the existing website versus and how it works the new website. So this is our current website. So if you want to find parking information, first of all, you need to know that parking is under UDE. So you need to go to departments and pick UDE under that. And you also have to know that it is under downtown revitalization division, so you need to pick that. And then you go to parking services to get the information. So the new website, from the main menu, you can pick parking. And then you can choose what you want to select from here. If I want to look at parking permits, I click on parking permits, and I have that information. So what you see here is a crisp and consolidated information. Anything that you want to know about parking is on one page. So through this project, what we have done right now in our current website, we have the same content is actually distributed across multiple pages. So we are actually consolidating the content into fewer pages. So in this particular case, we were able to, just as an example, we were able to consolidate 6 different pages parking information into one. So as far as the schedule, where we are here today is we are 20% content complete and 35% technical complete. And the plan is in mid-January, we are going to go with user testing. So we are going to have some of the community members come and test our entire website and as well as navigation. And in February, we are going to do soft launch. What that means, we will have both the new website and as well as the old website run in parallel. The new website will be available for preview for the entire community. And our goal is to deliver this product by April. So that is the community-centric website. I do want to acknowledge all the web publishers, the approvers, and the code project team. The product that you see here today is the hard work that they have done on this project, and I do thank them. We are excited to deliver this community-centric website to you and to the community.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. That's a very complete presentation. We appreciate this so much. I see several hands up. Councillor Anderson, followed by Councillor Lewis, and then Councillor Bednarz.
Ms. Namburi, how are you going to select the community members to test out the before your soft launch and your user testing in mid-January?
I'm going to ask Courtney Knox to speak on that.
Hi, Madam Mayor, councilors. My name is Courtney Knox-Bush, and I work in the Mayor and City Manager's office. With regard to community user testing, we're planning to do as broad an outreach as possible to get as much input as we can. So we'll probably be sharing our web link to the user testing. We'll probably be sharing that with as many people as we can, including organizations that might have a large membership that can also solicit interest in participating. And when it's running simultaneously in the soft launch phase, there will be a very visible button so that you can go and preview the new look and feel and provide us feedback as we go.
So, so it sounds like the user testing you're talking about is opening it up to as many public areas as you can, as opposed to saying, ask 5 or 6 or 15 or 20 or 50 people to come in and specifically try to use it.
Our intent is to use the user testing as an engagement tool and an
Okay.
awareness tool that we're piloting a new website, as well as to get critical information for improving the navigation
Okay.
and some of the
And
other
you decided to use that way as opposed to inviting people or groups in specifically to try it, for what reasons?
Because we want to use it as an engagement tool in addition to getting valuable information about how people are using it. We want to make sure that people are aware that we're doing this project and increase awareness and get more people engaged in it.
So you're confident that people will engage with this?
We get a lot of feedback about it.
Okay, good, because I will tell you that I have had some specific feedbacks by constituents and other people, and so if you were going to be inviting select people, I have a few people who I know would be very interested in. So what I will tell them is, you go on the site, starting in January, you can do your own user testing and provide your own feedback. Is that correct?
And certainly, and if you know of potential users, Uber users, folks who are really engaged in
Yeah.
trying to find information from our website, that would be useful to us at any time.
I'll be happy to talk to you in
Great.
a break.
Good,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay, Counselor Lewis, followed by Counselor Bednarz, and then Counselor Dickey.
Is it possible to go back to the slide that shows the new form, where you just click on parking? Okay, so it looks like there's like 5 headings up on the top, probably different categories. Is there also going to be a place where you can, in essence, type in, "I'm really, really lost, and here's the word I want to find"?
Yes, so there is going to be search feature on at the top, and that is the main menu that you're seeing. And again, that's done as an example, but there will be a search bar that where you can search for information.
Okay.
So I had 2 questions. The first one was, you know, some of the best testers, and I'm sure there's lots in this community, but this council uses the website constantly, and I am frustrated with it. And even I, as experienced as I am now at this, I still have a hard time finding things like my neighborhood associations, and I have a hard time linking in right into when I'm trying to get to the agendas and the meetings and that kind of thing. So I hope there's a clearer way. Looking at the community, you have to know that your neighborhood is under the button community and under the button my neighborhood, but I suppose that's about as clear as you can get at some point. People
Right.
have to use their intuition to get from one point to another. And those were my 2 questions. I have a hard time finding zoning maps, and I have a hard time finding my neighborhood associations.
So I have a hard time finding the information too on our website. So the goal is to easy to find and easy to browse. So, and when we launch the product, you actually will see a difference there.
And then now on our homepage right now, we usually have a what's new or what's happening, what's the hot topic of like the bridge or the Minto Bridge I'm referring to, or maybe the 3rd bridge or the police facility, or is that still going to be, you're going to have an area where you
Yes, and yes, we do have that, and we are actually in the process of designing that, so there will be a place for that too.
it'll rotate, I expect,
Right.
you know, as things get old and
Right.
other things on. Okay.
So the goal is to keep the content current and up to date. So.
Thank you.
Yes, Counselor Dickey.
Thank you. Actually, so Counselor Bednarz, we won't be here. I think we need something to do in April. What do you think? I mean, I was thinking I would love to test this out when you get to that point. That would be great. And I'm volunteering Counselor Bednarz to do the same thing, or he volunteered himself. So, but my question is. Has to do with so some of the feedback I've gotten. So let me phrase this correctly. So in terms of content, so I mean I love this redesign. Thank you. I've gotten some comments about, say, for example, the GPS maps not being very user friendly. So that's getting more down into the weeds from this level. So will that kind of content change as well, or will there just be links to some of the same content that's already there?
So what we're trying to do with the new site is pretty much every information that we're trying to display is going to have like an interactive map connected to it, and to keep that map, more up to date. So you are going to have like when I say when interactive, and you can see the information on your left and you have the same information on the right. So.
Okay, thanks.
All right, are there more questions from counselors? All right, well, thank you so very much for coming and providing this update to us and for all the work that you've been doing.
Oh, you're welcome. The staff did.
Well, we
most of the
appreciate
work.
all of you. We appreciate the staff. I'm trying to look over past Counselor Anderson so I can see the staff.
Yeah, I also
I
want
know
to.
they're over there. Thank you.
I do
We
want
do
to
appreciate the
Yeah, I
efforts.
do
We
want to
do.
mention that we could have gone outside for consulting help to redesign the project, but I appreciate staff's willingness to look into this and, and give their expertise to redesign the project, so.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we will adjourn our work session, and in just a few minutes, we'll get ready for the City Council meeting. I'm delighted with this wonderful turnout of people here. We'll give everybody a chance to kind of get in and get signed up and get settled, and then we'll open the Urban Renewal Agency meeting and then the regular City Council meeting. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to see so many of you here tonight. We have very interesting items on our agenda, and I know that we're going to have some spirited public comment and debate, and that's a very healthy thing. We always enjoy having people come into the council chambers and share their thoughts and their feelings with us. It's an important part of the public process. So tonight, we're going to start, actually, we'll have our call to order and our roll call, and then we have some special guests for our Pledge of Allegiance. So would the city recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Bennett is absent. Board Member Anderson?
Present.
Board Member Nanki?
Here.
Board Member McCoy?
Here.
Board Member Dickey? Here. Board Member Benjamin?
Here.
Board Member Bernards?
Here.
Board Member Lewis?
Here.
Chair Peterson?
Here. Thank you. All right. We have as guests tonight Cub Scout Pack number 103, and the boys are here to visit, and their project is Learning How to Build a Better World. I'd like to introduce their leader, and her name is Cara Beyer. Am I saying that right? Brian. Nice to see you. Thank you for the time you're spending with these young boys. Very important work. Very important. All right, if they would like to come forward, they are fifth graders. They're from Inglewood Elementary School, and they're going to come up and help us with the Pledge of Allegiance.
As soon as we get dropped the barricades.
All right, boys, turn and face the flag. And if you will start.
Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, Member McCoy, would you please provide a motion regarding revisions or additions
Don't have any.
or deletions? None at all for the urban renewal? All right, well, we sailed through that part. Thank you very much. And we have no reports from boards, commissions, or committees. It's now time for public comment. And we have a little bit of a mix-up tonight on our sign-up sheets. It is confusing. If anybody were to design a process that was, I think, set up to fail, I think sometimes our sign-up sheets would be that process. So indulge me while we try to work our way through these. I want to be sure that anyone who did sign up to testify during the Urban Renewal Agency meeting gets a chance to do that. But if actually you signed up on that page by mistake, then we'll just wait and you'll testify during the regular meeting, which will start shortly after this one.
Okay, what have we got? That one is for that's the Urban Renewal Agency sign-up sheet. Looks like most of these entities have signed up for item 3.3, right, and is that no, that's just regular. So what, do we have anybody on here to sign up for Urban Renewal items? Not that identified it.
Okay, all right. Well, it actually appears that there was no one who signed up to talk about an urban renewal issue. Is there anyone in the audience that did want to speak to an urban renewal agenda item? All right, boy, we're really sailing right along. We take care of that. Then we are now going to address the consent calendar. Member McCoy, do you have a motion for us?
Yes, Chair. I move approval of the consent calendar with the following pull. Item 4.3A by Member Anderson.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Member McCoy and seconded by Member Bednarz to approve the consent calendar with the one item of 4.3A pulled by Member Tom Anderson. And Member McCoy, do you have a discussion for us regarding the consent calendar?
Yeah, well, what remains on the consent calendar is approval of the minutes for the September 12th Urban Renewal Agency meeting.
All right. It's been moved by Member McCoy, seconded by Member Bednarz. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to that item, and Member Anderson, do you have a motion for us, please?
Yes, I do. I move the staff report to approve a North Gateway URA Toolbox Grant Program of up to $749,000 as for the property located at 3350 Portland Road Northeast for the purpose of affordable housing.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved by Member Anderson and seconded by Member Dickey.
It's her ward.
And
Makes sense.
is there discussion? Member Anderson, please?
Yes, I have some discussion, and I had a chance to talk about this with our Urban Renewal Director, Ms. Rutherford, earlier today, and I was just a little confused, and maybe that's a low bar standard for me being confused, but the thing that I was confused about was there's talk on page 3 of this of the report is that nonprofits are not eligible for grant money. Only profit organizations are eligible for grant money. Yet what it looks like now is we will be giving money to a for-profit organization that will then be using it as in a nonprofit organization, which is a subsidiary of that for-profit organization. I think I have that right. And I'm not opposed to this after listening to the explanation. In fact, I'm in favor of ever listening to the explanation, but perhaps it would be good if the director could explain to everybody.
So your summary is basically correct.
Well, thank you.
When we use urban renewal, we typically do not spend urban renewal grant funds on projects that don't bring growth in assessed value back to the tax rolls. When we adopted the action plan for the Portland Road Corridor, we added affordable housing as authorized projects in that plan. Affordable housing projects, to qualify for the types of funding and federal funding that are needed to construct those projects, are done by nonprofits, not for-profit entities. In this situation, we have a for-profit developer that has a nonprofit arm, and at this stage in the project, it is the for-profit arm of that business that is requesting the grant funds. As they're establishing this down the road to be owned by their nonprofit entity. So we would be granting the urban renewal funds to the for-profit arm, but at the end of the day, it is going to be owned by the nonprofit arm and will not be on the tax rolls.
And it will be providing affordable housing, and I note that that area is an area that could use a housing of all types, especially affordable housing. And I further note that it is on bus lines, which are very important to service folks who live in affordable housing, because we need to provide all sorts of services we can to the entire community, but especially to people there. So for that reason, I'm in favor of this project.
All right, thank you. Are there questions of Ms. Rutherford, or are there further comments from councilors? All right, we will move then to accept the motion made by Member Anderson and seconded by Member Dickey to, let's see, how does this word it? To approve the North Gateway URA Toolbox Grant Program exception. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We have no information reports this evening on the urban renewal agenda, and no special orders of business or public hearings. So this meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency is closed.
Yeah, I only agreed to be a urban renewal agency guy today.
All right. I will now call to order this evening's meeting of the Salem City Council for Monday, September 26, 2016. Would the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Bennett is absent. Counselor Anderson?
Present.
Counselor Nanke?
Here.
Counselor McCoy?
Here.
Counselor Dickey?
Here.
Counselor Benjamin?
Here.
Counselor Bednarz?
Here.
Counselor Lewis?
Here.
Mayor Peterson?
Here. Thank you. Counselor McCoy, do you have a motion for us regarding additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. I move approval of additions and deletions to the agenda.
It's been moved by Counselor McCoy and seconded by Counselor Nanke. And Counselor McCoy, do you have discussion regarding the
We have
divisions?
one revision to the agenda, and that is information item 6G, which is has to do with the Planning Commission decision in the Fay Wright neighborhood. And the Fay Wright Neighborhood Association submitted an appeal, so that is the change in the from the original agenda listing.
Okay.
It's going to be appealed.
And were there other items?
Nope.
On the, okay. Then the other items in front of us are all additional written testimony? Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. Thank you. It's been moved by Counselor McCoy and seconded by Counselor Nanke to approve the additions and deletions. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. It's now time for City Council and City Manager comment, and it's an appropriate time for me to stop and introduce, on my left, Public Works Director Peter Fernandez, who this evening is sitting in the hot seat. Is that the hot seat? All right.
It is rather warm.
It is the, normally our city manager, Steve Powers, is there, and Steve is out of town, and otherwise Casey Duncan would be there, and Casey is away this evening, and we've asked Peter Fernandez to be third chair. Here you are. Well, I'm confident you'll keep me on the straight and narrow. And on my right is our Deputy City Attorney, Natasha Zimmerman. Did I say that right? Yes. Excellent, thank you. Glad to have you here as well.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have time for Council and City Manager comment. Councilors, do you have any comments this evening to share? Councilor Bednarz, then Councilor Nanke, and then Councilor Anderson.
I just wanted to announce that this coming Friday, September 30th, at 180 18th Street, Family Building Blocks will have a ribbon cutting. The get-together starts at 11 o'clock in the morning, and there will be tours in the afternoon from noon to 5, but the actual ribbon cutting is at I believe, 12 noon straight up. I applaud this new facility. We have one out in Lancaster. We're going to have one here. Their mission is to keep is to keep children safe and families together. They're serving Marion-Polk County's Family Building Blocks as a 501c3 nonprofit organization and certified relief nursery committed to keeping children safe and families together through specialized prevention services, programs, and resources. And it is their goal to focus on prevention. They partner with parents raising very young children, prenatal to 5 years old, to provide high-quality, critical, and volunteer services to family with the greatest needs. This is right down the line with some of the things that I've been working on the homelessness and problems that we have in our community with homeless children and homeless families. And this is hand in glove, and I'm just happy to see, on top of that, the revitalization of the former Deluxe Ice Cream facility into a rather beautiful facility out there on, basically, it's 19th and State. But
Right.
Wonderful to see this. And I just wanted to say, Friday, go for the ribbon cutting.
Okay, Friday at what time?
12 noon is the ribbon cutting. They start at 11, and they'll go clear till 5. You'll be able to get in the afternoon after the ribbon cutting, a tour of the facility.
In for tours. Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Danke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two quick things. One being that the League of Oregon Cities annual conference is this week at the Convention Center, so we'll have several hundred mayors, councilors, and staff persons from all around the state. Just encouraging everyone to show them some Salem hospitality. And then secondly, last week I was in Austin, Texas with a couple of members of staff as well for the NATOA conference, telecom type issues, and the numbers are staggering on this one. And so it would be nice, because we hear lots of things on cell towers, to start looking at this one in the bud, because we're looking at 5G, which is the next phase. By 2020, we will have 20 to 50 billion Internet of Things connected. Refrigerators, instant medical monitoring for folks. You're going to be talking about self-driving cars. We'll start working towards that. But the sheer number of antennas that they will have to put in place, albeit many of those will be smaller, is enormous as well. So it would be nice for us to have a discussion on how we want that to kind of take place. And there's lots of people around the state and the country working on that right now as well. But
excellent.
It's a 700% increase in the next 4 years, and they actually need a lot of that now to even supplement the 4G that's out there. They'll start in a couple of cities doing rollout next year, but it'll be coming, and it'll be coming very fast.
Excellent. Well, it will behoove us to pay attention to that and start working. So please alert us as things, more information becomes available.
So we'll have some fun on that one.
I think so. Good. I'm sure we'll have a lot of community interest. I know that every time we've had an issue with siting a cell tower, we've been able to receive quite a bit of public input, and it does help, and it's important to have that.
It's not going to be just all these small towers over, because then you still have other carriers that want to get in, and they still need a big tower, and it's how do we deal with co-locations and items like that as well. And fiber to the home is going to take a lot more poles as well, because the backhaul generated from all of these wireless devices as you're moving around, it still has to get to the internet somehow. And so a lot of infrastructure and a lot of money will be on the line, and it's what our citizens demand of the service provider. So we need to find that balance and make it a happy place.
Great. Make it a well-connected place, right? Okay, thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Next week, Salem is fortunate enough to be visited by a national and international expert in reimagining cities. His name is Chuck Moran, and he will be here on the 5th of October, next Wednesday. I know there are some things during the day that I think the councilors and some other elected officials are invited to, but next Wednesday night here at the Laux Auditorium of the library from 7 to 8:30, there will be a presentation by Mr. Moran, and the purpose of Strong Towns is to support a model of development that allows American cities to become financially strong and resilient. There's a good article in this current issue of Salem Weekly about reimagining Salem as a strong town, and I strongly encourage anyone who is interested in Salem and its future to be there at the Laux Auditorium next week from Wednesday, October 5th. That's from 7 to 8:30, and I encourage the councilors and other elected officials who I believe are going to be invited to something in the afternoon to also be there. So I hope everybody comes out and listens to what this expert has to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there another counselor who had their hand up? No. All right. Then I will say something. It is my pleasure to talk about something that's, I think, near and dear to many of us in our community. That happens to be peace. And tonight I'm going to talk about Mahatma Gandhi, because the week of October 1st through the 7th would be a fitting week for us to remember and memorialize Mahatma Gandhi in the city of Salem. It was on October 2nd, 1869, that Gandhi was born in India, and in 1930, Gandhi made the historic Salt Walk to some 130 miles to challenge British law regarding the salt tax, the tax on the salt that people needed, crucially for their cooking and food preservation. And we know also that Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. made a similar walk on August 28, 1963, and certainly stirred our nation with his discussion, his speech of "I have a dream." And I'm just encouraging people in Salem to give some thought to that. Sometimes we're out walking, even if we're running an errand or we're just out for a healthy stroll. Perhaps give some thought to those walks that have been made by others in the name of peace, and have some reflection about that. So that's what I wanted to share about Mahatma Gandhi tonight. Okay, we will now move on to public comment. I should first of all turn to you, Peter Fernandez, and see if you wanted to make a comment. None? None? All right. Okay, we'll go to consent calendar, to public comment, and we do have several sign-up sheets. I'm going to navigate these as best I can. Okay, great. All right, the first person I'm going to call to speak is David Beam. David, and you'll have 3 minutes. When the amber light comes on, that's the end of 2 minutes, and at the end of 3 minutes, the red light comes on. And you just open your comments with your name and your address or your ward number. Welcome.
My name's Dave. My name's David B.
Thank you, Tom.
My name's David Beam. I'm a spokesman for disability people in Salem area. I'm an advocate for them, and I'm a spokesman for them. I did a lot of stuff for the legislature for special needs population in Salem. And I'm on the State Fair Board for Marion County. What I want to see the city council, and I was talking to the new mayor and Mike Swain, have a disability person under the city council and the mayors for disabilities. You don't have one for the city council or any services for them. After 5 o'clock, everything shuts down for them. How are you going to get somewhere like a flood or earthquake? How are you going to get there? No bus system, none, period. So I like to see, I'm working with the new mayor of Portland and the new mayor of Salem, and get this fixed. Because a lot of people count on Saturday service here and get back to work. Because on Saturdays, nothing for disability people. They're doing crime, and nobody got jobs for them. How are you going to get somewhere in an emergency? So I was thinking if we have a backup system for the Salem area. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, David. We appreciate you coming to testify.
And I'd really like to be appointed on this as soon as possible, because I think I'd be the best one for disability people in Salem.
Thank you. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to begin calling people who have signed up for agenda item 3.3E. I know there are several, and their names are on different lists, so I'm going to just put this together as best I can. And I'm going to start with Michael Wolf, who's with the Salem-Keizer schools. And then I'm going to call Cassia Quillinan, who is the chair of the Salem Park and Recreation Board. Mr. Wolf, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Mike Wolf. I'm the Chief Operations Officer excuse me, for the school district, and I reside at 1639 19th Street Northeast here in Salem. And I just wanted to come forward, and I think that there will be lots of questions that get asked about this transaction, and just wanted to say up front that we've been working staff to staff for quite a few months on this, and I know that there was even a discussion before we started working on this by others on the council about kind of aligning properties that make sense to align between both of our jurisdictions. And so we've just got some really interesting situations throughout the Salem, City of Salem, and the school district where it just doesn't seem to make sense anymore. Where some of our number one ball fields, for instance, Sprague as an example, is really not district property, but it's maintained and operated pretty much solely for district use. And so we carefully picked the properties that are included in the package because they made sense from an operational perspective. And I also wanted to make sure that as we go through the discussion tonight, that everyone understands that if you're using a particular piece of property today, you may not even know who owns it. Mm-hmm. That, in fact, probably will not change at all after this transaction. In fact, I can't think of one property that's included in this package where the use would change from how it's being used today. It would just make more sense for, if it's city property, that the city owns it and maintains it. It then becomes district property, that the district owns it and maintains it. We also have, even though we're not dealing with that tonight, we have a maintenance agreement that is outdated and antiquated as well. And this is a huge step in realigning properties, but also the agreements that are associated with those properties. So I know there'll be more questions and testimony on this, and I'm happy to answer any of those questions if needed throughout the evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Councilor Anderson.
Excuse me, Mr. Wolf, I have a question now.
I was done for a while.
I know you and I have talked in the past when we've been here for this, and I know you're aware that there are a certain neighborhood, specifically a neighborhood at my ward, that is very concerned about the situation. And you know, I'm going to be addressing that when the appropriate time. So I guess my question to you is, this is not necessarily an all or nothing deal. I mean, there might be some room for some sort of discussion depending on what motion is passed tonight between the city staff and the school district staff as to how this is going to be worked out.
That's true. That's part of the public process. I will say, though, that we're in support of the package as it stands.
Sure, I understand that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, Cassia Quillinan, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Councilors. I'm Cassia Quillinan. I live at 1145 14th Street Northeast, and I am the current chair of the Salem Parks and Rec Board. As you know from your packet, the Salem Parks and Rec Board did pass a recommendation to support this package of land swaps with the school district. We had quite a long meeting over this. Probably, I've been chair now for almost 6 years. This was the longest meeting we've ever had. So we discussed this at quite some length. Now, having said that, I will second what what Mr. Wolf just happened to say. It's our understanding that there will be no change in use. Now, all we're talking about here is change in legal title for some of these things. Now, recognizing that, there have been concerns raised by some neighborhood associations. Mr. Anderson has a concern, and my own neighborhood has a concern over Englewood Park. So I'm going to switch hats, and I'm going to give you my personal view on Englewood Park. This has nothing to do with the Parks Board at the moment. You have in your packet some pictures, and Mr. McCoy asked me to please identify what these pictures are. This is my home park. I'm in this park almost every day. So if you look at this first picture, right here, there's a big yellow building in it on this side. That is the gymnasium. Now, we had already given land to the school district quite some years ago to build that gymnasium. Englewood Park is a heritage park. It's the first and oldest of the neighborhood parks. The trees in it are considered to be what's left of what used to be called the Englewood Forest. It's full of mature oaks and large firs, and you can see those firs from almost any high building in Salem. So what our My Neighborhood Association is concerned about, and you can see the playground equipment here, there's at least 18 trees in the, what we can tell of the designated area, including several protected white oaks and these fir trees. So I would ask that you consider removing this less than 1/4 of an acre from this parks inventory. It won't make a huge difference in terms of the overall agreement. It will allay fears by the neighborhood association that those trees will get cut down in some fashion, which would really result in a loss of tree canopy for that part of town, and would be a very severe detriment to that whole park. So I think that's my own opinion on that, and I'm sure you'll hear from other people on that score.
All right, thank you. Are there questions from councilors? Councilor Dickey and then Councilor Bednarz.
Hi, Cassia. Thanks for coming down and speaking. So I just want to clarify your testimony. So, and without seeing the actual map of the what we'll be looking at a little bit later tonight. So, are you suggesting that entire park just be left out of there, or just part of it that includes the trees?
No, the only part that's in contention right now is this part that's in. As you look in this picture, there's a bunch of playground equipment right there.
Mm-hmm.
There's about 0.22 acres. So under 1/4 of an acre that's being, the proposal is to transfer that to the school. It's right behind the school gym. This big yellow building is the school gym. So it's right between the school gym and the basketball court, which we are retaining. So it's just this little chunk in there. The problem is that it's also highly wooded. It's got all of these mature oaks, it's got all of these firs, any place between 18 and 25 or 30 trees, actually, depending on how it's surveyed. And as you heard earlier, the surveys have not as yet been completed, so we can't tell you exactly how many trees are in there, but they are mature, valuable trees, and we really don't want to see them disappear. And if they did disappear, it would really make a huge, huge dent in the tree canopy and in the southern end of that park. Right now, this is a lovely little playground. The kids use it all the time. There have been no safety concerns that we're aware of. And it just works. It works fine just as it is. So the maintenance is minimal on this piece of property. It's all bark dust. So like I said, I don't think if we pull it out of the inventory of the traded swaps that it's going to make a huge difference to the Parks Department, and I don't think it will make a huge difference to the school either.
Great, thank you.
Okay. All right, Councilor Bednarz.
Thank you, Cassia, for coming down here tonight. I had a couple small questions. First one deals with, there's about 12.5 properties in here that are talked about being traded. Are you aware of, since you've been on the park board for such a long time, any other properties that didn't make this list?
That didn't make this list? Not offhand, I'm not aware.
So this is a pretty inclusive.
This list has been, as Mr. Wolf pointed out, has been generated over a long period of time where they went through and they really looked at pieces of property where they needed to do these land swaps, because in many of them, as he pointed out, we've got ball fields that are on our park property, or we've got something that's on school property, and we really need to make those switches. And if you look at the list, most of those properties are in the fairly sizable range. They're 3 to 5 acres, sometimes maybe a little more than that. And there's just a few of these very small ones, like Englewood. McKinley, I think, is one. It's also quite small. Grant, I think, is small. Richmond is like 0.1 of an acre. That's an easement access, which would help considerably with, consolidating ownership and maintenance of those areas. But yes, I mean, at some point, I suspect that when we do our new master plan for all of this, we'll have an opportunity to go through and again look and see if there are other properties where this might also work. But it has been a very intensive process between the Parks Department and the school board for some time now.
It is my understanding that one of these schools' home plate is owned by the city and the rest of the ball field is owned by the school.
That's correct. Yeah.
Then my next question had to do with, you worked on it. You mentioned you had one very long meeting. How much public input did you have during that period of time where you were making this analysis?
Oh, well, my goodness. Half of SCAN came in and testified. So we listened to them. People like Virginia Green came in. I think Hazel Patton was probably there. There was just a whole variety of city luminaries showed up to talk to us about this, and we listened to them.
So it was only over one meeting? This was not several?
Well, as things work in the Parks Board, you usually get a packet a month or so ahead of time, and and then you have an opportunity to discuss what's in the packet. And so this was out there in the public, and I know several people had commented and called me and said, "Can we come to this meeting?" And I said, "Sure." Come
so
on.
as chair, you allow people to testify during that meeting. I want to make sure that there was enough public input into this.
Absolutely. I'm the chair. As chair, I let people talk. And I have a place on the agenda that says right at the very beginning, public participation or public comment or whatever it is. Absolutely. And I make sure that everybody can talk. And then we actually ask them to participate in the discussion.
Excellent.
So, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm a big believer in talking.
Thank you, Cassia.
We appreciate that too, Cassia. We really do. We appreciate the work you're doing on the Parks Board. Yes, Councilor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for coming down, Casey. On these pictures, I'm assuming the kids use that playground equipment during recess then as well?
They do.
Okay.
They come out. They also sometimes there's another set of playground equipment at the north end of the park, which is not in contention here at all.
Okay.
And so they use that, and there's a little walking trail all the way around that's a fifth of a mile, and sometimes they run relay races around that, and so it's used.
Okay. And more so just in looking at it from the gymnasium, looking at the trees?
No.
On the lower one?
Yes, on the lower one, you're actually looking towards the north, as far as I can tell.
But that is the playground area.
No,
To the
we have
kinda
some
lower
other,
right?
we have some other equipment in the park
Okay.
that looks a lot like that. Some, what do you call those things? Chin-up bars and
Okay.
balance bars and things like that.
It just looks kind of busy if I'm a teacher and trying to look after a bunch of kids, and you have that many trees kind of in line of sight to
Well,
make
if
sure
you
that
were
all
there,
of them
you would
get
see
back
that,
in.
you would see that the area where the playground equipment is fairly self-contained. And like I said, lots of bark dust, and it's in between the gym and the basketball court, and so it's, it's easy to see where everybody is,
Okay.
actually. It doesn't look like it, because remember, this is a forest. I said it's a forest.
Right.
So,
All right, thanks.
yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Kids running through that.
All right. David Engen, followed by Ellen Stevens, and then Sherry Clemens.
Yeah, Mayor and councilors, my name is David Engen. I live at 1145 14th Street, not coincidentally the same as the previous speaker. And I'm not a city luminary by any means at all. She was talking about city luminaries. I'm not one of those. I have lived in that house for about 30 years. The first several years I was still sailing, so I was only here off and on, but for the last 20-some years I've lived here and mostly in town. And not far from there, less than a mile from there. And I walk in that area frequently. My 2-mile walk actually goes through the park usually. So I'm very concerned about that park. I have actually planted trees in the park. In '96, we lost 6 Doug fir there, and I and several other people planted 5 new ones. And they're about this big now, and they're above the school, but they're not nearly the size of the old ones. So I'm very concerned about the park. And I was there the other day when I found out about this, and I saw I think it was 4 trees were marked with white paint, and that bothered me because why would you mark trees with white paint unless you intend to do something with them? So I'm opposed to turning over any part of Englewood Park to the school board, period. You know, the ball court there actually used to be used by local people to play basketball in. I haven't seen local people playing in there recently, but I'm wondering what the status of that is, because that was a resource for people to go out and play a game of basketball if they wanted to. So I've actually planted trees in the park. I have helped to install playground equipment in the park. I've collected money so that different things can be installed in the park. So the park is close to my heart, and I don't want to see it changed. So please do not let that piece of property go to the school board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did anyone have questions? All right, thank you. Ellen Stevens, followed by Sherry Clements, and then Jeff Schumacher.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Ellen Stevens. I'm in the Scan neighborhood. I'm here to talk about the McKinley parcel that is part of the plan here. For nearly 40 years, I've been a close neighbor of McKinley Park. 3 generations of my family have played here. We've chased soccer balls on its grassy fields and picnicked on its tables. I felt secure having our children at McKinley, the only park within our neighborhood that they could visit without supervision. Bush Park and Clark Creek Park were not allowed. This park is a uniquely open space. It's a space where children can be seen in the open from all 4 sides without any obstruction. It's a place where neighbors watch out for neighborhood children. The success of McKinley Park has been due to a long collaboration among those who want to provide safe neighborhoods to families. Salem prides itself on being the collaborative capital. Let's continue this spirit of partnership between the city, the school district, and the community surrounding it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Councilors, do any of you have questions? All right, thank you. Sherry Clements, followed by Jeff Schumacher, and then Carol Suzuki. Welcome.
Welcome. Before I begin tonight, I need to make a correction on the sheet that was given to the staff before the meeting. It lists in the first sentence my address as being 2513 First Street Northeast. You guys terrify me so much that I harked back to an address that I had in 1997 in Tillamook, Oregon.
Excellent.
So I will correct that by saying I reside at 1590 Jefferson Street Northeast. I am in the Nen neighborhood.
Okay. Got it.
I want to thank Mayor Peterson for her history lesson tonight, because I think it serves to remind all of us that when you speak out and speak up, things happen, and they are usually things for the betterment of your surrounding area. I'm also the Parks Liaison for NEN. I know you all got the 2 letters that NEN voted to send at their annual meeting on September 20th, and I will only read them into the record if you request, but it is in your packets. As a private citizen, I hope you will include as well, now this, I'm switching hats again like Cassia did. I hope that you would consider including a small site at Barrick Field in this agreement, and that you will exclude the 0.22 acres of Inglewood from the proposal. Please also consider tabling this motion until more study can be done, and include neighbors in your study group. We feel excluded by the city in this matter, although we know that it was heard at the parks. I have to question how the neighborhood associations were notified. We did not get notice that this was an undertaking that involved parks all over the city. The only thing that we knew when we got notice of the Inglewood piece was that it included Inglewood Park. We did not get a copy or a notice that there was a 25-page work booklet that outlined the entire taking. And that concerns me, having been on several city committees in another area. And I wonder whether or not perhaps correct notice was given. I'm unfamiliar with how that works in Salem. Over there, it wouldn't have flown, but maybe over here it's okay. Thank you for your time this evening.
Okay, are there any questions from counselors? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. All right, Jeff Schumacher, followed by Carol Suzuki, and then Tony Stewart.
So my name is Jeff Schumacher. I live at 1945 West Nob Hill, Southeast. I'm the current president of SCAN, so I'm here on behalf of...
Can you please speak up into the microphone?
I'm the current president of SCAN, so I'm here on behalf of SCAN. But I'd also like to point out that my 2 kids go to McKinley School, and we visit the park all the time. I don't want to repeat what people have already said. I will say that what, Ellen's testimony is, I would second that. It's a wonderful little park. We get a lot of use out of it. I'd rather focus on something that Mr. Wolf had said at the beginning, and that is that if this transfer happens, the use won't change. And I can see that in the near term, that's probably true. You know, the current principal at McKinley is very, receptive to community members using the park, and after hours, of course. But I think eventually, down the road, as administrations change, as the school district reevaluates their priorities, they would just look at this extra 1 acre of land as an asset on a balance sheet. And it would be a shame if they were able to turn that into, a parking lot, or sell it off, or expand the campus. It would be a real blow to the neighborhood for them to lose that park. It's the only park we have of such a small scale in our neighborhood. As somebody pointed out, you can sit on a bench and watch your kids in any corner of the park. It's a great spot. So I would ask the council to remove McKinley from the transfer list. Thank you.
All right, are there questions from any counselors? Councilor McCoy.
So your concern is that long-term, the school district might sell this or something? Is that what I heard? And it's not so much that there's a concern that it's not a park and it's part of the school district. So short-term, you're pretty comfortable with where it would be. It's just long-term, you don't know? Is that what I heard?
Well, absolutely. I think short-term, as in this year, sure. Nobody would notice a change if the school took over ownership tomorrow. But long-term, I think it's naive to think that the school would be as good of a landlord or good of an owner as the city has been. On my ride to work, I passed by Leslie Pool, which is owned by the school district. I don't know if you're familiar with Leslie Pool, but it's an eyesore. And I'm not suggesting they're going to build a pool and then abandon it at the McKinley site, but they don't give me any comfort. Having the city there and having that ownership tension, I understand it might not be the most efficient way to operate parks, but the end result is great. And I'd hate to see that disappear for some minor operational efficiency.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carol Suzuki, followed by Tony Stewart, and then Lynn Takata.
Hello, my name is Carol Suzuki, and I reside at 396 Hoyt Street. Tonight, I'm here representing myself and my husband, Brian Klum. We've lived in the neighborhood since 1998 and lived just 2 blocks from McKinley Elementary School and Park. Even before the birth of our daughter, Kohana, in 2008, we have long used McKinley and see it as a community resource. It was a place to exercise for me, and for Brian, a place to practice his fly fishing casts and to play with our dog. And it just really is a peaceful oasis in our neighborhood. And I just want to support and thank Councilor Anderson's motion to exempt McKinley Park and take it off the list of properties to be given to the school district in a land exchange. And I also wanted to take a moment to thank SCAN for bringing this important matter to our attention. As a parent of a McKinley Elementary School third grader, the importance of McKinley Park as a community resource has become even more apparent to me. It is such a wonderful and special place. And I think it exemplifies, McKinley Park exemplifies community cooperation and partnership between public agencies and local residents, and is really a model of careful stewardship of a shared space. And I'm a believer of shared responsibility and management. I think that really protects important places. And I worry that a transfer will impact access and neighborhood use of what is currently a multi-purpose recreational park outside of school hours. And when I think about McKinley Park, and most recently when the school, after 10 years as the principal, Annie Morton, our principal at the time, it was her wish to install a water fountain, not only for the students at the school, but for neighbors that came. And it was a combination of community funds and fundraising, and also a SPIF grant and some money from I believe the lottery. And if this were to become a school district only property, those resources wouldn't be available in quite the same way. And I just want that to be recognized, because when you think about school budgets always being so tight, I could see that park improvements might fall closer to the end of the list, perhaps. And so, I think that's something that weighs heavily on my mind. And really, I can see no compelling reason why McKinley cannot continue to be co-located and jointly operated by the school district and Salem Parks. It's 1 acre of land, really. And the memorandum of understanding that has stood for over 40 years, and I think has worked well. And it's a good partnership between 24J and the neighborhood. And, I hope that it is removed from the list.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there questions for Ms. Suzuki? All right, thank you for coming. Appreciate your testimony. Tony Stewart, followed by Lynn Takata.
My name is Tony Stewart. I live at 343 16th Street Southeast. I'm here not as part of the SCAN neighborhood, but in a neighboring neighborhood. I have seen over the years many, many partnerships like this, where you have a park, you have a school, and you have many residents in the neighborhood. They work beautifully together. They collaborate together. I have been in this neighborhood for almost 30 years. We have in our neighborhood Bush School, which is connected to Aldrich Park. It's probably the youngest of these partnerships because the school was actually opened in 2005, the new Bush School. And our neighborhood went out in full force because originally they wanted to take the whole park. We didn't want them taking our whole park. So we worked together with the school district and the city, and we have had for 11 years now a very successful arrangement where the school has half the park and we have half the park. We share it. We share activities in that park. The parks are good for families. They bring neighbors together that wouldn't ordinarily have a chance to come together. They sponsor events for the good of the community. So they have been a very helpful part of it. SCAN Neighborhood Association, they worked hard, and they obtained a block grant to turn this piece of property that didn't belong to the school district, but turn it into a park. They got the block grant. They worked with the school as partners and came up with a master plan to share the park. That's been 40 years. There are other parks that are very similar. But what I want to say is that those people in SCAN, they were the fabric that wove our community together. And we're looking at this as an individual park here and an individual park there. It isn't. This is our community. And we are a whole because of these partnerships. We work together. And what makes us strong is that ability to work together. I also am not real sure about the long term. I do believe that it will stay useful to the community now, but I don't believe that the future is so sure, because people change. You will change. Not you personally, but your position will change. So I'm asking you,
time is up.
If you would not remove the, McKinley School Park. And I'd like to also chime in and say, the same goes for Inglewood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there questions from counselors? All right. Thank you for coming down to testify. Lynn Takata, followed by Kenzie Clements.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can, yes.
So kind of nervous.
right.
So I'm an artist, and I just moved to Salem about 2 years ago, just in part, and chose a house in Englewood because of the park. I just love Englewood Park. And I'm there a couple times a day. It's a great solace for me. It's great inspiration as an artist. So this Sunday, a neighbor and I counted the trees. Originally, Englewood had 350 trees, and now it's about 250. It's really hard to count trees if you've ever counted trees in a big park. But 35 are in the proposed transfer area. And about 30 of those are the Oregon white oaks, 6 of which are significant, which means they're greater than 24 inches in diameter. So under the City of Salem's urban forestry strategic plan, that is protectable, and it holds a special place in Oregon's history. So I was trying to do my research and reaching out to people in the neighborhood, and Jenny Meisel from the Marion County Soil and Water Conservation District told me that the Oregon white oaks are very important for wildlife. They're a rare species in Oregon, and it's vital to protect them. So my concern with the property transfer, I understand everyone's saying it's going to stay the same, but unless there's language that, says protects that land and protects public access, the school district has different consideration than parks. They care about keeping children safe. They put fences around their fields, and they care about sight lines, and they take out vegetation so that they can see. So I have a lot of concerns about that tract of land and those trees. North Salem already has fewer parks than other Salem neighborhoods, according to a national study done by the Trust for Public Lands. And so, and half of our parkland is in Minto Brown. So it's not distributed within the neighborhood. We need those open spaces. And I'm getting emotional. I'm really, I've seen that happen before, where land is given away and then someone decides to build on it. Well, they already built a gym, and, on the land they took a quarter of an acre, not a big deal. But, we just really want to hang on to that. Coming from Portland has a lot of big open spaces, nature parks that you can walk for miles. Salem only has Minto, and so, I'm unlikely to get in my car and drive, 20 minutes to get to Minto Brown. So keeping that little bit of extra green space in Englewood, I think, is very important. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from counselors? All right, thank you for coming down and testifying.
Sorry, I'm just...
That's fine. Kenzie Clements, followed by Matt Churchill.
Good evening. My name is Kenzie Clements, and I reside at 1590 Jefferson Street, Northeast, and I work for Head Start. I'm here to let you all know how important it is to have a playground at Barrack Fields for children and families. Because I work with low-income families, I always encourage them to get out and spend time together. I know how busy life can get, and to have places for families to create memories and help their children's development is priceless. Children are naturally drawn to active play outdoors. It allows them to explore the environment, develop muscle strength and coordination, and gain self-confidence. Children have a great need for physical exercise and activity, a chance to use their muscles to run, jump, swing, ride bikes, and also be out in the fresh air. Having a park at Barrack Field to use any time of the day benefits families. Because of busy schedules and two-income families and families where grandparents are raising grandchildren. Please keep this in mind when making your decision about whether to include a small piece of Barrack Field in this transfer. Think about your children. Think about your grandchildren and your neighbors. What would you want for them? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from counselors? All right, thanks for coming down to testify. Matt Churchill, followed by Leslie Polson.
Matt Churchill, I live at 2150 Summer Street Southeast. Thank you for the opportunity to address this issue tonight and to listen to other comments and become more educated about it. Again, be pretty quick. I don't want to be redundant. Most of my concerns have been addressed. I just wanted to give my small perspective as a father and a community member, my concerns about the transfer of McKinley Park. I think I can just use an example, would be easiest. When my youngest daughter started softball, I thought, well, we'll just drop, we live actually a little closer to South High School than to McKinley. I thought, well, we'll just pop down to South and, you know, practice on the field. And you can't practice on South's field without an appointment. And certainly I've heard other stories of access being restricted on school property, where, you know, we go up to McKinley Elementary and we have pickup softball games and practice with our daughters on the field, and I really appreciate that. So, again, I just wanted to voice concern about it. And I don't really see a compelling reason why that park needs to be transferred to the school district.
Thank you. Are there questions from counselors? Okay, thanks for coming down and testifying. Leslie Polson, followed by Jacqueline Schindel.
Okay, hi. Can you hear me? My name is Leslie
Yes.
Polson, and I live at 930 Garnet Street, and I'm here to oppose the inclusion of Englewood Park in the land swap to the Salem-Keizer School District. My reasons are as followed. Based upon my experience of living near North Salem High School, my neighbors and I have been cut off school use of the ground. When I moved to my house in 1995, my neighbors could play tennis and jog on the tracks before school. The school district has of late not been a good neighbor. I get all the liabilities and none of the benefits. I spend a great deal of my time picking up trash, cigarette butts, chocolate milk containers, and looking for a park place. The days of being able to play tennis are over. The school district closes and has locked them up. I'm here to summarize Ken Simula's discussion on the elimination of parks from this. Since the last 50 years, the Nen neighborhood has lost a number of parks. The Nen block located between 12th and 13th Street, which is the former old Washington Elementary School, which is now where Safeway is, used to have playground equipment that included swings, jungle gym, chinning bars, a softball field, and a grove of mature fir trees on the northwest corner with picnic tables. Additionally, the Nen grounds near Olinger Pool, 1300 A Street, this school district site had picnic tables, a small meadow, playground equipment, swings, jungle gym, and a chinning bars. The Straub Environmental Center is now on the east side of Olinger, and the playground equipment is gone. Barrack Field, which you've heard about, had a small park. They repaired the sewer, and there was equipment that had a climbing dome, slide, spring-mounted riding animals, and a picnic table. After the sewer replaced in that area, the equipment was removed, and the site is now empty with dirt and weeds. There is also another park which is not related to the school district at the Oregon State Fairgrounds, which was removed. I will skip over that for quickness on this stuff. We now have only 2 parks in our area, in McRae and Englewood. Englewood Park was acquired from the Salem-Keizer School District in the 1920s, and I viewed plans for the park designed by Lauren Schreiber. Those park plans can be viewed at the University of Oregon Archives, and they should be viewed to appreciate the vision of an urban park, the beauty and experience of the oak savanna of the valley. Based upon my experience with North Salem High School's removal of the school grounds, I'm concerned that this swap would remove an area that has been absolutely amazing for children to play in, and basically neighbors in the Englewood area would face another padlock.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from counselors? All right, thank you. Oh, wait a moment. I think Councilor Anderson has a question.
Thank you very much. We've been hearing a lot about Barrick Park, and I'm not sure where Barrick Park is and what school it is located or where it is. If you could tell us, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, Barrick Field is a baseball field, which is
For North Salem High School?
for North Salem High School.
Okay.
There was a little tiny pocket park, but when they basically put in the sewer line repair, they needed a place to park the equipment. So the playground equipment disappeared. So that never was put back. It's now flat.
And that's the area that you read was full of weeds and not developed?
It's full of weeds and not developed. So people in that area who don't want their children to cross Market Street for obvious reasons, they were able to send their kids and play. My daughter played with her friends from Englewood at that park. It was a very popular park. It's gone. So that's our experience with our relationship with the Salem-Keizer School District. And we all have our kids that are there, but there's a security issue and sort of a benign negligence that we're experiencing in our neighborhood.
Thank you. Jacqueline Schindel, welcome.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Schindel. I reside at 970 15th Street Northeast, and I am a member of the NEN board, so I will be speaking to you from the board's concern and my own concern because I use Englewood Park on a daily basis walking dogs. Now, one thing you have to understand about NEN, and this hasn't been brought up yet, NEN sits on 1.237 square miles, and we have a population density of 6,600 per square mile. The city's population density is 3,512, so we're considerably more dense. We also are in the lower income range. The below poverty level is 31.6%. Salem is 19.6%. We have very little green space in our area. We have no land left for development at all. I'm not talking, there isn't a lot even for a pocket park. So this is why the aspect of losing almost a quarter acre of Englewood Park is really rather traumatic to a lot of us. Because once upon a time, there were no parks in Salem. Then in 1926, the city paid $6,000 to purchase the very first city park, Englewood. It was 7 acres, and they bought it from the Kay family. At that time, the Kay family had a stipulation that the park was supposed to be for everybody, and just to be enjoyed. Lord and Schreiber, we've mentioned before, designed this park, which makes it a heritage site. Once upon a time, there were several more playgrounds and park equipment in Salem. Now we're down to 2 because the school district kept taking away playground equipment. So this is why we're a little dubious about having things the way they are, because in our history, it hasn't been a good history with the school district and playground equipment. Now, there was a ceding of approximately a quarter of an acre of park to the school district in 1972. And this was given by the city, $7,000 to help construct the multi-purpose building, which the neighborhood was supposed to have access for. We've had 3 meetings, 2 for NIN, in the last 44 years, and 1 citywide sex offender meeting. That's it. We have not been allowed into this area that, as a condition of sale, we were supposed to have some access to. So Englewood reminds me of a Grimm's fairy tale park. It's dark, it's tree-laden, and it's kind of, in a way, a little spooky, but we love it. We dearly love it. And NIN only has 0.84% of parkland in the city of Salem, which is ridiculously tiny. So we don't think, because we've given away so much already, we don't think that we can give away any more without really, really hurting. And by giving away this particular chunk, we will lose 14%. 14% of our tree canopy. And that is an awful lot in our book. So we respectfully beg the council to withdraw the NIN site.
Thank you. Is there, are there...
The Englewood site.
The Englewood site. I'd ask you not to just hold your applause. Thank you. Were there questions from councilors?
Yes,
Councilor Lewis?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there has been no decision about cutting any trees. It's your concern about trees going down that brings you here.
Well, the thing is, this is in a playground area, and as much as I love trees, I would personally take down 2 of the oaks because they are smaller and they are leaning because of the Doug firs. So if I were a school official and I looked at those 2 trees, I would say, ooh, that one and that one down. But problem is, if you put in fences or anything like that, you will disturb the root system. And with the oaks and the Doug fir, they have a very interlocked root system. So you have to be very, very careful. Any other questions?
Okay, other questions from councilors? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to make a guess that John Christensen, perhaps you wanted to sign up under 3.3E. Did you want to talk about parks? Okay, come on down.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm just trying to kind of group people together.
Were 2 sign-up sheets there, and
I know, it is.
Which ones were?
It's confusing, but welcome.
City staff, can I give this for council, please? Good evening. My name is John Christensen. I serve as the Parks. It's called Historic Preservation Parks and Gardens Committee for SCAN. It's a 9-person committee. I became chair when Tyler Molstrom had twins, or co-chair, and he lives in our neighborhood. He's an attorney in town, and I said it would help. What we did,
thank you,
starting in the year, I don't know, maybe 2010, 2011, we started doing an assessment of the park resources in the SCAN neighborhood. Fairmont Park was addressed really well, and I commend Mr. Fernandez for his work on that. It was excellent. Then we looked at the Crooked House Playground in Bush's Pasture Park, and we started a process of raising money cooperatively with the city to rebuild the Crooked House Playground, because the foundations of the playground had deteriorated so bad that the playground had to be removed. Another thing we did is we started looking at McKinley Park, which I want to fully support what Mrs. Stevens said, which is a unique park in SCAN because I've raised 3 kids and now I have grandkids. It's one of those parks that you can say to your 10-year-old, your 8-year-old, okay, you can go there. You can come back. That's not the case with Clark Creek, and I don't want to diminish Bush Park, but I wouldn't let a certain age kid just go down to Bush Park. There's a different kind of activity, there's a different kind of neighborhood oversight, and you don't always know who belongs. Not that there's a membership or anything, but there are some folks that, kids smoking, kids using drugs. That's happened in Clark Creek occasionally. Also at the south end of Bush Park. So McKinley Park has kind of a neighborhood guardianship around it. You know, you kind of go, okay, we know our kids are safe there. And it's important to retain the site as a park. The other thing I'd like to bring up, if I can, please, I had the opportunity to actually listen to the work session. And Councilor Dickey, there were a couple questions I want to respond to because the public could not respond during the work session. But Councilor Dickey brought up the situation with, I think they're called system development charges. And in the city, the central core and the developed areas of the city don't have as ready
Excuse me,
access.
Mr. Christensen, your time is up. Can you wrap up?
Yes.
Okay.
Funding for parks. When you take a park like McKinley out of the system and you give it, essentially eliminate it, you lose resources from, the neighborhood does, from SPIF. It loses resources from public foundations or private foundations, and Councilor Benjamin asked this question, including Collins and Jackson. You lose federal land and water grant monies.
Mr. Christensen, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. Okay, thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Christensen?
I thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming down. Okay, it looks to me as though that's everyone who had signed up just to speak about the item 3.3E, and we'll move on to 3.3D with Alan Alexander, followed by Brandon Fahlman and Evan White.
Good evening, Mayor
Welcome.
and Councilors. Alan Alexander, and I'm the current chair of the Sunny Slope Neighborhood Association. In looking over the council packet on Friday, I was surprised to see a line item about the potential sale of a piece of property on South Liberty. This is one of two parcels that the Neighborhood Association has followed closely for some years because they're two very sensitive pieces of property. And we were just surprised that action was taken without any notification to the Neighborhood Association. We are accustomed to having good working relationships with the city's departments, but this was certainly a surprise for us. And it was even more complexing because the proposed sales agreement didn't include a staff report, didn't include an appraisal, didn't even include a legal description of the property. So it raised more questions than it possibly answered. So that's here tonight to talk about what our concern about what might happen here and the fact that we knew nothing about it. We had a meeting last week. We would have gladly discussed it had we simply had notice. We would ask that perhaps council delay approval of this sales agreement until some additional information can be provided, and we will share that with our neighborhood association and the neighbors who abut that property. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions? Councilor Anderson.
Thank you very much for coming down. I think there's been some confusion prior to the meeting about whether the parcel for sale involves the community garden there, and my understanding now is that it's south of the community garden. It's not the community garden itself. Is that your understanding too?
That's correct. Okay. The only reference we had was the little map that was provided, and
it's hard to tell.
Well, and as I said, it was hard to tell, and we were very concerned about how it included our community garden because our whole area is proud of that. it's certainly an asset to that section of the
And-
street. That's the other parcel we talked about, 1 of 2, that's very sensitive and we track, is where the community garden is.
Okay, and so the fact that the parcel for sale is immediately adjacent to your community garden, that's another concern you would have and like to address in a neighborhood group meeting and maybe with the staff.
Yes, we would. We'd simply like to know the plan for it. And we're also sort of surprised about the sale price. It's half of the appraised value based upon the county information. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Evan White?
I'm Evan White, Land Use Chair of the Sunny Slope Neighborhood Association and a great fan of Mahatma Gandhi.
Thank you, Evan.
This is a 1-acre parcel along Liberty, which is a major arterial, which is proposed to be sold for half of what the Marion County tax assessor says it's worth. The tax assessor values the property at $102,940, and the city would be receiving approximately $49,000 for that after paying a portion of the closing costs and title insurance. So as Alan mentioned, we were very shocked to hear about this by scanning the agenda for tonight's meeting. I went down to the city today and went to community development to try and get a staff report, and they couldn't seem to access it, so they sent me down to urban development, and I was able to get a copy of a pre-application meeting which occurred 1 month ago. We're not sure how 5 single-family homes would be crammed into this 1-acre parcel, which has some difficult access issues. It's not shown anywhere on the staff report. The price seems very low to me when you consider that utilities and sidewalks are already present, so the developer wouldn't have to supply them. And also, just mentioning the housing needs analysis recently concluded that we have a surplus of single-family land in town, a shortage of multifamily land, and a shortage of commercial property, particularly at the south end of town. So it seems to me by selling this property so cheaply, the city may be giving up some valuable options in the future. The comprehensive plan, I believe, hasn't been updated for the last 3 decades. Is that correct, Glenn? So bottom line is this looks like a very bad deal for both the Sunny Slope and Favorite neighborhood associations and for the taxpayers of the city of Salem, because you'd be foreclosing some valuable options down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councilor Anderson.
Thanks for coming, Mr. White. I know you wanted to watch the debates, so you'll have to see the reruns. It sounds like part of your real concern is you as a neighborhood group just don't have any information upon this. For example, why is the sales price half of, the proposed sales price half of what the value in the county tax rolls is, and why is it single family? All these kind of questions that would be helpful to be explained to you as the land use chair and as part of your neighborhood group.
Yes. I understand from Mr. Dameron, who I talked to today, was very helpful, that it has been on the market for some time with no takers. So, but you know, when you consider everything's developed down there, there's very few spots for future commercial activity or even city needs, you know, so giving that up doesn't seem like a good idea to me.
Councilor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for coming down, Evan. Yeah, and that would have been in Ward 3 as I started here 16 years ago, and I think we were trying to sell it then. Yeah, that's just a tough piece, and we have no use for it. We're trying to find anybody who could possibly have a use for it, and it's been a long time trying to find someone. So I'm assuming that's why this is out there. I'm kind of concerned that nobody knew that it was out there, though. So we'll see where we go with that one.
Is that a question?
No, it was more just a comment in regards to there's no benefit necessarily to the city, and I think it actually costs us more to keep trying to go out and sell it. We've already wasted its full market value just in trying to find a way to get rid of
deed
it.
it to our neighborhood association as an expansion of the community garden. That would be very helpful.
Hey, if we had a legal entity, I'm sure we would
But the
consider
price
that.
is so low that we were just talking that I'm not so sure if we'd known about this, we couldn't have gotten some people together and bought it from the city, frankly.
Excellent.
Okay, other questions for Mr. White? Okay, thank you very much. All right, we have 2 more people that are signed up to speak at this point on an item 3.3A. I'll call Hazel Niles, followed by Richard Berger. Oh, wait a moment, I'm so sorry. I'm backing up. Brandon Fahlman is speaking on 3.3D, obviously. Brandon, are you here? There you are. Thank you for your patience.
Hi there. I'm Brandon Fahlman. I'm the developer. And yeah, as you all know, this property's been for sale for a while. I live in Ward 8, by the way. I guess my 2 cents on it is we plan to do 5 single-family homes because it's kind of a difficult, narrow strip along Liberty Road. And we've been talking with many people down at the city, including the traffic engineer, about access points for it. So we're planning a one-way entrance directly across the street from the Idawood intersection with a one-way exit to access the 5 homes. We also know that there's some neighborhood CC&Rs that make the developing a little bit difficult. City rules dictate that you have to have minimum 4,500 square foot lots, but the CC&Rs for the neighborhood dictate 6,000 minimum square foot lots. So the lots are going to be bigger than the city minimum guidelines. We also have a minimum of 60-foot width between the setbacks. So at minimum, we're going to have a 66 to 70-foot lots depending on the subdivision type, whether it's a planned unit development or a traditional subdivision. So as everyone knows, it's been for sale for a long time. There's been meetings, including pre-application conferences, even back in 2007, where people were proposing multifamily use projects. Townhomes was the big discussion back in 2007 with another potential developer. And the zoning is single-family residential as it is, so we'd be sticking we wouldn't be changing any zoning. We're sticking to the CC&Rs, and we want to do nice things there. This would be my first project, and just would like to do some nice single-family homes there, and we know there's a shortage of housing. So that's my 2 cents, and I'm happy to answer any questions for the neighborhood association or anybody else who has them about what we want to do.
Well, at this point, we will take questions from city councilors, but not from others in the audience for you. But I saw Councilor Bednar's hand up, and then Councilor Lewis. Was there another? All right, Councilor Bednar's.
So one of the conversations has been minimum lot sizes. So what is exactly going to be the lot size that your concern is, shoving a lot of housing into such a small area? And it does look geographically, at least depth-wise, a very small area if you include things like a driveway, be it one way. So what is the size of the lots that are going to be sold?
Well, at minimum, they will be 6,000 square feet. Probably the average would just be a little bit over that. So I think the size of the parcel is just under an acre, which, I mean, that's 40, it's almost 43,000 square feet. So there's going to be, I think that once it's all done, it may not make sense just from looking at it the way it is right now, but we want to save as many trees as we can. And we want to have, there's a minimum of 25-foot rear setbacks. So the properties that will be affected by this, there's going to be a pretty good distance between the property line and the existing and the proposed structures. So I think that it'll actually look a lot more spaced than even the neighborhood as it is now if you look at the existing homes.
Can you explain a little bit about what a planned unit development is, PUD? Yeah,
it allows, from what I understand, again, I'm not representing the city, but they're the ones who kind of dictate the guidelines on that. For the most part, a planned unit development is a subdivision with a little bit more flexibility because of the difficulty of this piece to develop. And they require things like rain gardens that will, filter out the water that comes off the roofs, and They require like common areas too, so there's going to be probably some kind of a gazebo with a barbecue area for the people, for at least the 5 homes there to enjoy, and they also require a certain amount of green space that can be shared by the neighborhood there too.
But for those burdens that you take to put on with that, you do get some flexibility in return for that. That's what I'm
Correct.
hearing.
Yeah.
So-
Like, for example, I think typically when you do 5 lots or more, you have to do 60-foot wide access, which is just not feasible with that piece.
Okay. The rest of my questions are to staff down the road at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis, followed by Councillor Benjamin.
2 quick ones. One, how do you see your development interacting with the community garden next door?
I want to stay far away from the community garden. I don't want to affect that in any way. So right now, this parcel has nothing to do with the community garden, and it was offered. There was talk with the city about selling that as well, and I just said, I don't want to be that guy. You know, that's something everybody enjoys, and I don't want to be the martyr. You know, I just want to do something nice, and I figured this was the best option rather than people having, you know, apartment buildings or commercial buildings looking into their backyards.
And my other question, do you have a sense of what the price point will be for the homes?
I guess the estimated pro forma, and I haven't run hard numbers at this point, probably around $200,000 or so for each individual house, which is about the most affordable single-family housing right now you could find in South Salem.
Okay, Councillor Benjamin.
Thank you for entering this endeavor in that area. You know, single-family housing, multifamily housing, it's all over the nation that everybody's getting pinched. And so these times like these where people like you step up and say, I see opportunity to help people and to take care of my business. Question is, what's the square footage of the homes?
Probably all we can fit comfortably without violating any of the neighborhood CC&R guidelines would be 1,200 to 1,300 square foot single levels, 3-bedroom, 2 baths.
Oh, that's not bad.
So we probably, you know, we want to do, like I said, you know, we'd like to do vaulted living areas, vaulted master, and then probably basic finishes, but for the most part, you know, hardy plank siding on the exteriors and a little bit of interest on each house. We don't want to just stamp out cookie cutter 5 houses that all look the same. We want them to have some interest from the front. And the reason we're putting the garages in the rear is so that it gives a little bit better, as you're driving by, it just looks nicer.
Nice, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming down and appreciate your patience to testify.
No.
Okay, now we will move to 3.3A, Hazel Niles, followed by Richard Berger.
Hi, I'm Hazel Niles. I live at 3355 Duncan Avenue. I want to thank everybody that got up here and was nervous before me. Okay. I have watched, it's been close to 40 years that I've lived at this house. Bought it. It's about a 1/4 acre lot, large city lot. Little houses all up and down the street, usually 800 square feet. Very affordable houses, okay. I've watched the change. Part of the subdivision when I moved in showed a street going in behind me and houses being built. Then they wanted to do a medical center there, which they needed housing because these would be children from all over, children being serviced under 8 years of age, and they would need housing for the families because it would be long-term, 6 months to a year. So let's change some zoning there. And I was not living in this house, which I've owned the whole time. Families always lived there. When they said, let's change some more, we need some more apartments, I'll get a grocery store in there. I used to shop at Mayfair usually. Occasionally I would take the bus to Fry's Thriftway. Safeway had already closed down when I moved in. I've watched this change and the push for, 180 units. Are you kidding me? And part of it's wetlands, so they can't build over here. It's got to be over there. I found 2 people that were excited. One said they're going to have to buy my place to get access to Carlton, and I'll make some money. The other one was just I don't care. I'm 80-some years old, and what happens now, oh well. Cessna is no longer in the backyard over by the wetlands. It's been removed. That used to, we had fun things in that neighborhood. We are very close. We know each other's backgrounds. It's changed. I can go with city feeling comfortable with it. When we had trouble in our neighborhood, we paid for a security guard because we didn't feel like we got help from the police department. 5 houses up for me was 2 oversized lots that got put for park, and that was where the kids could play. Many of the neighbors did not want children playing in the street there, so that was the play area. It's got 4 houses on it. The city sold it off. So now we're going to change zoning in my backyard for apartments, and my joke with my neighbors is no more nude sunbathing in the backyard. You got 3 stories high. There is a buffer. They've thought of a lot of things to make it pleasant. Highway Avenue, you cannot barely drive down that street Monday through Friday. There's no parking. The only time there was supposed to be any access from Highway Avenue was emergency vehicles going into that lot, because they built 2 houses there and skinned it out. But that's going to be an in and out. Portland Road, everybody knows the traffic at morning and evenings there. It's heavy. Are you going to give us a light? And how many more people on Portland Road will be killed? Because that happens a couple times a year. Okay. Parks, I wanted to put that in there, that our park is gone. Okay. That's where my children played when they were little. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilors, do you have any questions? All right, thank you very much. And Richard Berger.
Hello, my name is Richard Berger. I work at Mountain West Investment, 201 Ferry Street. I also live in Salem. I'm representing Mountain West, who's the developer on the Portland Road project. We are trying to get affordable housing into Salem as a philanthropic effort. We see the need. I mean, you look at the housing study, rents are going up, people who have jobs can't find housing. It's really across the board a real problem in our community, and it is hard to develop for-profit housing. It's complicated, and it's doubly hard to develop affordable housing. We are at a bit of step 1 in this process. In order to develop this project you see on the screen, which is Portland Road, as well as the other one mentioned, Kaplinger Road. There's going to be a lot of different partners we're bringing in. We're forming a nonprofit to eventually own this and run it long term and make sure it stays affordable. And we've gone to NGRAB and gotten their support for the urban renewal dollars. We've gone to the neighborhood association. We are early in design, and we intend to, as it goes through the land use process, hear from neighbors and try to make this as pleasant a neighbor as possible. We're very proud of our projects. We don't think they're eyesores. We think this will be a very good project that will fit in well with the neighborhood. We're really looking forward to working with the neighborhood once we get to that point where we're fully in design and fully in the land use process. We're not asking for a zone change. That's one of the reasons we chose this property as well as the Kaplinger property, is that we can do it without a zone change. There's still lots of land use standards we have to meet and intend to meet through that process. Just so you know where we are, we're asking for home funds and urban renewal funds at this time. We'll then apply for the state through different programs for larger dollars that come in through state programs to build affordable housing. And once that process is underway, then we'll go through the land use process and go through the normal development stuff of setbacks and working through all the standards of the city. So that's where we are, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We appreciate your testimony. I wonder if you could describe for us the location, other than the name Kaplinger Road, which just doesn't ring a bell for me.
Of course. I'm sorry I don't have a map, and I hope there's a map in the staff report.
No, the staff report just shows Kaplinger Road. It doesn't indicate any other.
Yeah, basically.
Can somebody kind of give me some?
Yeah, of course. If you go Winco in southeast Salem, and you go head towards Cordon Road from there, you end up, it's right out by Cordon Road. If you head out Maclay, Kaplinger comes off Maclay right near Cordon Road, and it's in that area. There's been a lot of apartment development out there. It's
Right.
near that general area,
Right.
so that should give you a sense.
It does. So it's near Cordon Road, and there is an elementary school quite close by.
There you are.
And I think that's just where we did approve apartments maybe a year ago.
Yeah,
Something
there's
like maybe a
been
little
several different apartments in the area on the other side of Maclay that have developed over the last 15, 20 years, give or take. We didn't develop them, but in that range.
Right, I think so. Okay, good, that helps me. All right, so, other people, Councillor Dickey, Councillor Bednarz.
Great. Thanks for coming down. And I'm a little remiss. Hazel, thank you for coming down and speaking. I appreciate you kind of sharing your concerns about this. I guess I have a couple questions. One is just, and you sort of answered that in that you will be working through the city process. And, I really do encourage you to work with the neighborhood association. You heard some of the concerns, that Hazel has, and she may be speaking for other neighbors who are on her street. And I know that there's a normal channel of sequence of events that have to happen to make that happen. I don't know that I'll be here by the time you get to that, so I really encourage you to do that, and I'm sure that the person who comes after me will be watching that as well, and I'll make sure that he's aware of that. So thank you. And I do appreciate you, though, seeing the need. That property has sat empty for a really long time, and there is definitely a need for affordable housing in the area. I do just had a quick question about your development on Kaplinger. I do recall when we approved the apartments out there a year or two ago, one of the concerns was there's not great transit access out there, and so putting low-income housing out there, what is, and I don't know, without having the map, I don't know exactly where it is. Is there good transit access out there, or what? Is there a plan for that?
It's 0.4 miles away is the nearest bus stop, which in my mind isn't close enough, especially since you have to walk down Cordon to get there. So, no, I wouldn't say there's good access. We have had conversations with transit already, and they have been favorable to potentially either moving that line or changing that line up. With our apartments, as well as all the other apartments, I mean, the city zoned that area for multifamily, and it has developed as it's been zoned. And as that's changed, the line that was near the edge of the city is no longer at the edge of the city. So we have had conversations with them about possibly moving that line. We would definitely support it, and we think it'd be a good change. We are closer to transit than those other apartments are, so that's a good thing. And but that's obviously something we've thought about, and ideally, we would really love to have a line come near us, and as well as the other clusters of housing that are there.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Bednarz?
So I heard you talked about market analysis. Were you privy to the report, the housing needs analysis, that the city is required to do once every 10 years to figure out if we have enough acreage or too much acreage of any particular? You are carrying it right in front of you, yes. And in that report, does it or does it not say that we are missing some 200 plus acres of land for multifamily, some 2,400, I think, units of housing for in this community at this point?
I can't quote that exact line, even if I have it in front of me. I know it says the need is great, and I'll quote a line that 39% of Salem households were cost burdened in 2012, with renters cost burdened more frequently than owners at 52%. So that's a sizable percentage of the population who are simply paying too much for housing.
Once we get to this portion of the meeting where we're actually going to be debating or talking about it here, I've actually asked to have this particular thing pulled to talk about it. But there's this huge demand. We have a very low vacancy factor in our community as it is right now. And there's just not enough housing for people. So people are having to double up, or they're having to go without housing, period. And it has to go someplace. And I think that's the difficult charge that we have, the 9 of us in this room have, is making decisions. We're not the developers, but making the decisions as to how can we least impact our neighborhoods and still fulfill the need of the housing in our community.
Councillor Bednarz, I'm going to just interrupt a little bit, because right now we can actually ask questions of those who are testifying, but we'll have time later in the meeting for actual discussion back and forth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Berger? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we have a late addition to signing up to discuss 3.3A, if I'm correct. Okay, TJ Putnam, welcome.
Hey, welcome. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm so excited to share again about the pot of money that the city has leveraged to end homelessness for families. We are recipients of home funding, which we're asking, the city typically gets a little over. Sorry? Salem Interfaith Hospitality Network. Thank you. Salem Interfaith Hospitality Network has been granted about 200,000 of the 600 that the city typically gets in home funding. Our partnership with the city and the way that we can leverage what comes in from the 36 congregations in town is amazing. And because of this, the city's been able to help end homelessness for 40 families. What we're seeing right now in the community is about a 0.5% vacancy rate, and about a quarter of that 0.5% is available for families that have low income, depending on their number of children, if they have a past eviction or credit issue. The need's huge for families, and we need more affordable housing. What setting aside the funding does, it could potentially jeopardize what the great work the city's currently doing through Salem Interfaith Hospitality Network. And what we're currently granted, that there'll be about $200,000 left, which is about what we get, but it's also available to every nonprofit in the community. Wanted to make you guys aware of that. But the need for affordable housing is great. I believe our housing needs analysis says there are 6,400 units that we need to meet the need of housing in our community. 6,400 affordable units. We've always been a fan of the model that if we build more sooner or later, the lower income will become available. That's not happening right now, and it's not meeting the need. And I'm excited that Mountain West is moving and doing something about that. And I'm also excited that we have a great partnership with the city.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions from councilors? All right, TJ, thank you for all the work that Interfaith Hospitality Network is doing in our community. A tremendous, I think, 10 years that you've been 17 years hosting families in churches in our community. Thank you so much. You help them become stable, and that's what we like to see. That's great. Thank you. All right, Tim Cowan. Tim, thank you for your patience. You had signed up to speak under public comment on an item not on the agenda, but we're going to bring you to this portion of the meeting rather than have you wait until the very, very end of the meeting. Welcome.
September. Oh, okay. Excuse me. Mayor, Council, my name is Tim Cowan, 3160 Dogwood, and I'm not in Bednard's ward. I found that out. What I did is, remember I gave you, if you want to call it kind of an application to take a look at the police facility. So I'll just go over the notes that I have. First of all, just so the people who are not here before, I retired as a senior vice president and regional manager for First Interstate Bank of Oregon, had Mid-Valley, Central, and Eastern Oregon reporting to me. So what I did is looked at this bond issue as if you were coming to me to support the bond for a loan. Now, let's see if I can get this. The chart there is how the project would be done. Why do I do that every time I get up here? I can't read anything. I think one of the major components is that you're going to have an owner's rep, a project manager. I think that's going to keep the cost down. That owner's rep is going to interface with the architect, the contractor, and with inspections. Now, here's a couple, I like this. When I talked to Alan Dannon, who's the assistant city engineer, does an excellent job. If he was involved in the project, I'd be very comfortable with it. It has, you're going to have performance bonds, and I would ask you to complete a review of the financial strength of all parties involved. In fact, it'd probably be easier for you to read this than what I'm trying to. On a political note, it appears that local companies and/or talents will be provided an opportunity to bid on this project. Also, you may want to discuss what will happen if there's any surpluses. And make sure that on staffing, there's sufficient staff for the city manager, but based on what I was able to get from my discussions with Alan, I would support the project. I have no opinion on the police facility or the amount or anything else. I just looked at it as, would I be willing to grant that amount of money? And I would approve it and forward it up to the powers to be.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your testimony, your analysis of this. Were there questions from any of the counselors? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming down and your testimony. All right, that concludes the public testimony as I had it. Is there anyone else here this evening that wanted a chance to testify that didn't get their name on a list? Okay, we're going to take a brief break. I think everybody probably needs to stretch a little bit. Maybe some who've already testified may want to leave, and we don't want them to feel like they're disrupting the proceedings. So we'll take a brief break. We've had a nice chance now to have a good visit with everybody that we wanted to see this evening. Thank you for that. And we will get back to business. And the first thing we will do is to go to the consent calendar. So Councilor McCoy, do you have a motion for us?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. I move approval of the consent calendar with the following polls: 3.3A and 3.3D by Councilor Benars and 3.3E by Councilor Anderson.
Second.
Will you please repeat the polls?
3.3A, 3.3D, D as in David,
3.3
3.3A,
okay.
3.3D,
Yes.
and 3.3E.
All right. Was there a poll on 3.2A? Did you say that one earlier?
No.
Or not?
No.
Okay. Thank you. That must have just been some other discussion. Thank you. All right. It's been moved by Councilor McCoy. Was there a second? Seconded by Councilor Bednarz. Councilor McCoy, would you like to describe the consent calendar?
Yes, I would, Madam Mayor. First, we have the September 12th council minutes. 3.2A is dedicating public right-of-way lands that the city acquired from the school district to give access into an area in West Salem. 3.2B is authorizing the approval of revenue refunding bonds issued by the Hospital Facility Authority of the City of Salem in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $225 million to allow Salem Health to refinance certain bonded indebtedness. And that's basically they're refinancing their bond to get a better interest rate and better return for the bang for their buck. And it's three different bond issuances from 2006 for $120 million, 2008 for $59, and 2013, and two bond series for $70 million. And they're refinancing all or a part of those to move forward. That's 3.2C is amending the City Council transit occupancy tax policy. Once all this one gets complicated, though it's not that. The Culture and Tourism Promotion Advisory Board recommends amounts for the budget for the city to the city budget committee. Currently, they had a formula of 60, 30, and 10, 60%, a minimum of 60% going to facilities, 30% going to operating expenses for special events, and 10% going for capital improvement. They want to change that to a minimum of 60% a minimum of 25 and a minimum of 10. The reason being, they were having trouble balancing the numbers, and they continued to come to the city council for exceptions. They figured, why continue to do that? Let's adjust the policy so we can avoid that, and they've looked at the history, and this will be a lot better moving forward. 3.3B is an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for access necessarily to build the sound wall along the new southbound on-ramps from Kubler to I-5. The ODOT will build it and maintain them, but they need access to them, so this will do that. 3.3C is appointment to the Citizens Budget Committee of Vanessa Nordyke. The City Council met earlier and interviewed Ms. Nordyke, and I can tell you she's very, very impressive. The amount of volunteer work she's already done at a very young age is staggering, and the interview said she's going to be a great addition to the Budget Committee. And then 3.3F is the sale of surplus property at 1660 Snowbird Court Northwest, and this has to do with a parcel of land that was bought for a proposed, back in the day, city park that is no longer going to be a city park, so the city no longer needs this. They've had it appraised at $115,000, and we'll look at for sealed bids with a variety of other requirements included for anybody interested in purchasing that parcel of land. And that is it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Well done. I appreciate that. We have a motion on the floor. Councilor McCoy moved to approve the consent calendar, and it was seconded by Councilor Bednarz. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We will now move to the public hearing, which is items 4A, 16-237. Do we have a staff report?
The Salem City Council will now hold a public hearing for the purpose of receiving public testimony regarding the 2015-16 program year Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report for the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Programs to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The hearing will be conducted with staff presentation first, followed by other interested persons.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. I'm Rena Peck, Federal Programs Manager with Urban Development. Before you tonight is the 2015-2016 Consolidated Annual Performance Report, or as I move on, I'll call it the CAPER. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development requires the city to report on the performance of all projects and programs that were funded with Community Development Block Grant or home funding through the 2015-2016 program year. So as some of you, or all of you actually, have read the report and you look at it, it can be somewhat cumbersome. It is a very prescribed format from HUD. So just to let you know that. The Consolidated Annual Performance Report identifies that, as I mentioned, the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership funding projects and programs that were intended to meet the needs of individuals and families who are earning 80% or below the median family income. These needs are met by addressing economic development, homelessness, affordable housing, and revitalization of particular neighborhoods. This year, the total CDBG and home funds that were expended were approximately $3.9 million, $3.4 million in Community Development Block Grant or CDBG, and $526,000 in home. Sorry. HUD requires the City of Salem to file this report within 45 days of the end of the fiscal year. This report provides feedback to HUD regarding how the city is meeting its goals that were outlined in the 2015-2019 House and Community Development Consolidated Plan. As you can see here, Goal 1 was to provide funding for economic development. The proposed goals for this year were 52 businesses and 128 jobs. You'll notice that the actual accomplishment was only 52 businesses served. The 128 jobs were 2 projects, Merritt's Job Savers Program, which is welding education, and Garten Services, which was providing jobs to people with developmentally disabled. Those projects are still open because they're still placing people in employment. So I do anticipate that we'll reach that 128 jobs that will be reported next year, because they'll be completed within this year. And goal 2, homelessness, you can see that we actually exceeded our proposed goal. With affordable housing, you can see here that our annual proposed goal was 74 units, and we actually accomplished 4. Again, that goes to projects not being completed within the program year. Those projects that are still outstanding is a major rehabilitation of the Jason Lee Manor property on Center Street, and we're still doing some work with Catholic Community Services Foundation with the rehabilitation of some properties that they purchased a couple of years ago. Revitalization of neighborhoods, as you can see here at Grant School Park. We completed the demolition of a structure that was there that was not safe. And in the picture there, you can see kind of how the Parks Department made it really nice. And then Center for Hope and Safety, we provided some windows to them so that they were able to give their clients a little bit more privacy in their new building, and also provided some energy efficiency. Here you can see where we've provided various services to, again, families who are either homeless, or really the most of the citizens that receive service here are actually below 60% or below the median family income. Tenant-based rental assistance is a monthly rental payment to people for up to 2 years if they meet the requirements. And then security deposit, of course, that's a one-time payment for a deposit for people who are needing to get into housing. The microenterprise training that you see here, again, it's 52 businesses that actually created jobs. Many of them hired, of course, the owner and then 1 or 2 other employees. So prior to tonight, the public hearing, we had a 15-day comment period, and it was open to allow citizens an opportunity to review and comment on the consolidated plan. As of the time the staff report was written, we had not received any comments. Last week, we did receive 1 comment, and you did receive a copy of that in your additions. We have not yet had an opportunity to respond to that, but we will be providing that citizen a response by the end of the week. It is required to be submitted with our CAPER 2 HUD, so we'll make sure that everybody's aware of that. I see us this coming year, the 16-17 program year that will be coming to you about this time next year. We are moving forward, and a lot of projects are being completed, and a lot of citizens are getting the help that they so deserve. So I'd like to just take this minute to thank staff for all of their work in putting this report together and helping to provide collaboration with other community stakeholders to citizens of Salem and Keizer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we certainly do appreciate the collaboration that the city is able to have with many of the providers in the community, but certainly appreciate your work, Rena, and the work of your department to truly make housing affordable and make housing available for more people in our community. Urban Development Department works very hard at this, I know, and it truly is a need, and it's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a public hearing to conduct. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
So Mr. Putnam had moved his testimony to the other portion of the meeting.
Oh, okay, that's right. All right, well then.
He doesn't wish to speak at this time.
Doesn't wish to speak twice, okay. All right. Oh. You know.
Thank you for your psychic testimony.
All right, was there anyone in the audience that did want to speak during this public hearing and didn't get a chance to sign up? Okay, I think we're all right then. And our next procedure then is to have questions for staff. Thank you. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thanks for this report, Rena. I want to go back to goal 3, where your goal was 74, you were only able to do 4, and you said part of that, or that was because there were many units that were in development but hadn't yet been finished by the reporting period.
Correct.
So in the two you mentioned, how many units are there? And would that get you to the 74 goal, or more or less, or where?
Yes, it actually will exceed the 74, I believe, because some of the projects were from 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so Jason Lee Manor, there's about 50 units. And so we're actually in the process of actually signing, the city doesn't sign the contract, but Jason Lee Manor is working with the developer to start that project. If you drive by, you'll see they have like plastic on the exterior.
You mean ride my bike by?
When you ride your bike by,
Okay,
yes,
thanks.
sorry. And then the other one is the actual rehabilitation of the units that Catholic Community Services received about 2 years ago.
And how many units is that?
Oh, with that, there's probably, I think, about 20 units altogether.
Okay.
For a minimum.
So if I could follow up on that, you say, it sounds like this is kind of a moving target, because you say some of these were for 2 years ago, and did you reach your goal 2 years ago, or should these really be counted now toward the goal 2 years ago and not toward the goal this year or next year?
Yes, we only can report them when they're completed and leased up.
Okay.
So sometimes the project may be completed, but we're in the process of leasing up. I don't see that being a problem in our current situation with housing. I believe that they'll be, the Jason Lee Manor, of course, there's people already living in those units, correct? So they'll already be leased up. So it's kind of, rehabilitation, affordable housing rehab is kind of an ongoing thing. With Jason Lee Manor particularly, they found out when they did a capital needs assessment there was a lot more work that needed to be done than originally anticipated. And so it's just been taking that long.
So now when you set your goals next year, will these 50 from Catholic Community Charities, or no, Jason Lee, and the 20 from Catholic Community Charities, will those count toward the goals you set next year, or will you have some new units that might be in the goals toward next year?
We're hoping to have new units.
Okay.
So when
I am too.
Yeah, when we actually come to you to report on our progress, that's why I said we'll probably exceed that goal, because we'll have completed projects.
They'll have these completed plus other ones.
Plus the other
Great,
one. Hopefully
great.
we'll have the other ones completed.
Thank you. That's terrific, and thank you for your work you're doing. If I may have one more comment, Madam Mayor? Thanks. I've read the comments of Sarah Owens and Michael Livingston, and you and I talked a little bit in the break, and you told me you were going to respond, and I didn't know that you have to respond, but it's good that you do, and I ask really that you look at it carefully, because Sarah and Michael are here. They're involved in the homeless. I know that Sarah, Homeless Initiative, I know Sarah's on the Housing Advisory Committee, so these are people who take a real interest in what's happening, and they're not, I don't know, I'll just call them naysayers, or, they're not opposed to the good work you're doing. They just want to make it better, is how I would characterize what they're doing. And I think that's an admirable goal on their parts, and also admirable that they really have looked into these things. So I'm looking forward to a comprehensive response to the issues that were raised by Ms. Owens and Mr. Livingston. And I'm sure you'll have one. Thanks.
We take every comment regardless as a means to take input from the public, right? So even if we weren't required by regulations to provide that, we would make sure to provide that service to any citizen who made any comment regardless. Yeah.
All right, are there further questions? Councilor McCoy.
Get a copy of the response.
Yes, we'll make sure that you get a copy of those responses.
Other questions, councilors? All right. Councilor Anderson?
I move we accept the report.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Anderson and seconded by Councilor McCoy. I think that for the public hearing, we have, all right, I will close the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion.
To no one's surprise, I move that we accept the report.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor McCoy, Councilor Anderson, and seconded by Councilor McCoy. Sorry, Councilor Van Nars, but, you got to share it once in a while. All those in favor of the motion, or is there any discussion about the motion? All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we'll now go to special orders of business. We'll start with item 3.3A. Councillor Bednarz, do you have a motion for us?
Yes, I do. I would like to move staff recommendation.
It's been moved by Councillor Bednarz and seconded by Councillor Dickey to move staff recommendation on item 3.3A. Councillor Bednarz, do you have discussion?
Yes, I do. I wanted to pull this tonight because of its importance to our community in the first step of making a public-private partnership essential for reducing and solving some of our homeless problems in our community. This is the kind of work I wish we didn't have to do, but it's the kind of work that needs to be done in a community with a high percentage of the population that are homeless or in trouble of losing their homes because of being priced out. There will be 288 units between these two projects, and 60%, the people who will be getting in here will have to have 60% or less of the Salem's median income. That means if you're a family, and it slides depending on how many people are in your family, but for a family of 4 on average, it's around $34,000 or less to live in one of these units. And that's not meaning that it's low-income housing, it's not free-income housing, but it is affordable housing, trying to make it for a group of people who are struggling as rents rise in our community. So for that reason, or those reasons, plural, I would really support this, to move forward with this.
Excellent. Further discussion? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I'm in favor of these two for the reasons that Councillor Bednarz has stated, and I'm sure other councillors will state or will view. I just want to make a little follow-up on the comment by Mr. Berger upon the question from Councillor Dickey about the public transit to the far out area as opposed to the area on Portland Road, which is within the constraints of only 5 days a week, is at least relatively well served by the public transportation. It's just a problem I think we're going to have to deal with the future, in that if we're putting affordable housing units out on the further ends of town, they need to have public transportation service, and this public transportation cannot just be 5 days a week to get them to their jobs or someplace else. It's got to be 7 days a week, because one of the problems that are faced on a routine basis with people in these kind of situations is that they don't have public transportation. They have to get a car, and the places you can usually get a car are going to be at not at Power or someplace else. They're going to be at the lots we see lining 12th and 13th, which provide a service for people, but the service they provide is pretty much high rate of interest, and it can use a lot of their disposable income that they're not selling on houses to end up getting a car that is they wouldn't need if they had bus service on a regular basis, and that is really a problem as we start to place these areas out further. And I'm in favor of this one because of the great need for housing, but I think looking at the whole picture completely, we've got to also look at, we need to provide all the services possible. And I was very happy to hear that the one out is close to a school, so because there are going to be people there with children, and so at least they can get to the school. But we really need to get better transportation for folks who are in these affordable housing areas. Thanks.
Well, you make a good point, and certainly the city has no responsibility. It is not responsible for funding the bus company, but it would certainly do well for everyone to also realize that if we only allowed the construction of multifamily on existing bus routes, we would be forcing multifamily into the core, when looking down the road 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, our city will expand out to the outer ridges, outer edges, and it's only fair and proper to disperse multifamily throughout.
Oh, I agree
throughout
with
that. I know you agree with that, but I think it needs to be said that it is something that we have to do, so that as we look to the future, and as the bus company is able to expand its services, those areas will become part of the demand, the area with demand. So I think there's a lot to be said about that further placement. Did someone else have their hand up? Diana, Councillor Dickey, sorry.
Yes, thank you. So I am, and as I sort of stated before, I'm pretty excited about this coming in and meeting this need in 2 areas of town that really have the need. I guess I would just like to take a moment, though, to say I hope that as we look at opportunities for bringing in more affordable housing into our community, that I hope this project is very successful. We've seen a great public-private partnership with Mountain West and the technical high school. So, we've got a good model, and so, I'm optimistic that this is going to be a great opportunity. I hope, though, that we are able at some point then to see other opportunities where we can bring in some affordable housing that isn't just apartments. Apartments fill one kind of need, but there are all sorts of families with all sorts of different needs. We've talked about smaller houses. Councillor Benjamin talks about tiny houses all the time to me, so I hear about it a lot. I hope that we're able to bring in some variety at some point as we identify those locations and are able to bring some things in, because, I think it's not, apartments aren't the only way to solve the issue of multifamily, and we've had some discussions even of, how do we handle it in the larger context of our own plans, and can we bring some different ideas in. So this is really exciting, and I hope it's just the start, and I hope this is the seed that gets the ball rolling.
I certainly agree with your message about different types of places to live, and there is nothing that really cements a family into a community greater than home ownership in the community. And there are programs, and I think it'll be really interesting as we're looking down the road with the Mid-Willamette Homeless Initiative and looking at funding programs for home ownership. And the other thing is that we now have established a work committee for the accessory dwellings. Am I using the right word? I'm looking at Glenn Gross. Right, for accessory dwellings. So we are getting down that road finally, and I'm pleased that we are. Great. Okay, other comments? Councillor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, and I drive by the Kaplinger site at least, depends if I go back and forth, that'd be 10 times a week, so it might really be like 6 or 8. And we did have a lot of concerns at that site a couple of years ago on access to transit. Since then, we have this massive apartment complex at the end of Gaffin Road, where it hits Corden, and we just approved construction and they're moving dirt on another one as well. The people in the first development, all of their cars are parked where the second development is, because there is no other way to get around, so all of them have 2 cars, but there's not 2 cars worth of parking for everyone in that. So one of my fellow employees works here and she goes, well, what are they building there? And I told her, well, what are we going to do with our cars? So there is an issue there that may develop as that second phase completes, but with Kaplinger as well. We have the entire Renewable Energy and Technology Center out there. We're going to have a bunch of stuff out at the Mill Creek Corporate Center, and I think there's been talk if something else comes out on Mill Creek side, but if we got something at Renewable Energy, I have people who actually get off a bus at State Street and walk a mile down Corden Road to get to work, or partially ride a bike. So there's not a lot of options out in that edge right now, so it'd be nice to see that, which would help this potential development out there as well, because people need to get places, and we don't have a lot of options right now.
That's
which is true. Even harder when you're trying to move someone into affordable housing, because typically to help with that affordability, you don't have a lot of parking potential to keep the cost of the development down.
And that gets to be a problem, and we've found that in some of the other projects where the assumption was that only one of the people in the unit would have a car, or that they would share one car, and that's not actually the reality. I think Councillor Benjamin, you had your hand up?
Well, I was just kind of curious at this point what we're working on, probably, I'm assuming, that we have contact with Chariots and the transit.
Some people here do.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you know, being it said, I mean, it's out there in the open now, and I know that they
Sure.
just did a major revamp of their servicing here last year, I think. And it looks like they need to probably look a little closer on a few key areas. And I'm guessing that everybody's talking about this so that when things start getting built, that transit's not going to come out here. How come we have all these apartments but we have no buses yet?
Yeah, I don't know how they track, you know, potential growth and new permits and
send
new
up a flare.
construction. Send up a flare.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. All right, is there any further discussion? All right, we have a motion on the floor, correct? A motion on the
We do.
floor
It was actually made
to
by Councilor
accept
Anderson and
the,
seconded by Councilor McCoy.
no.
It was
No?
made by somebody.
Oh, opposite.
I'm making the motion.
You did the other, okay.
All right, so the motion on the floor is to accept the report that we have received from staff. Correct? Yes. All right,
Staff
all those in
recommendation.
favor of the
Staff
motion
recommendation.
signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay. We will go to item
3.3. D.
Thank you, 3.3D, and it's also Counselor Bednar's.
So I would like to make a motion to accept staff recommendation on 3.3D.
Second.
It's been moved by Counselor Bednar's and seconded by Counselor Nanki to accept staff recommendation on 3.3D. Counselor Bednar's, do you have a discussion?
Yes, I have several points that I wanted to make, and probably
Okay.
the most salient one that I want to is keeping my neighborhood informed when this property's been sitting there for literally, well, a long time, decades, and it's upsetting to people who live in there, expect to see that land stay the way it is, and certainly some people do, and they expect to have a garden or expand that garden even further up and down Liberty Street or Liberty Road, and they just want to be informed. And I think they thought they were in the loop of information that wasn't, and it just didn't come to them, and it's upsetting for that to be surprised. As it was mentioned, it would have gone before the neighborhood association if they'd known about this several weeks. I don't know the calendar of events. I just wanted to have staff's assurance that when other properties, certainly when the neighborhood garden area is being discussed, maybe now they might stand up and purchase that land for a dedicated use for that garden.
So the other parcel that you're speaking of, the one where the community garden is located, has also been on the market for the last decade. And we have a party that is interested in submitting an offer on that piece as well. We have been holding off until this discussion could occur this evening so that we could get some direction from council for next steps and whether or not we should go ahead and have this person submit an offer and then share that with the neighborhood association or directly with council, or allow you the opportunity to say whether or not we don't want to market this property anymore and to pull it off the market.
It may be a consideration to pull it off the market at some point, if it is our intent as a community to keep that garden there, unless the neighborhood comes up with the money to purchase the land, which now that the red flag has been thrown up into the air, they might just do that. I did ask the question why the sales price was pretty low, and I understand, well, it's been on the market for so long, anybody could have come in. My question was answered to that. My question was answered that it was not the community garden going into this point. I was also concerned that they were squeezing five homes into that land, but understanding that we're looking at around 6,000 minimally on per square foot per lot. That's larger than our average in our community, and that's not exactly squeezing. That's actually good room for housing. So my concerns on those all came down to just notifying the neighborhood and that beloved neighborhood garden where I am growing hops that need to be harvested right now. So.
Well, I would like to speak to that point, and if staff is looking for direction, I would certainly like to add my voice to the direction, and that is that the purpose of the city is not to own property and hold property so that it can be given without any cost to people to use as community gardens, when indeed there is demand for that property, and that property can be sold, and that property can go on the tax rolls. The tax rolls, the income from the tax rolls benefits the city, and that benefits the community because it provides the money that we need to provide the services. And I would be very, very disappointed if I thought the city was just holding pockets of land back just so that it could provide gardens for neighborhoods and lose the opportunity to add to the housing base and to add to the tax base. And I know the city has tried very hard for a long time to market many of these properties that are the little slivers and the pockets that are left over sometimes from road construction, et cetera. And when the economy was so poor, there was no likelihood that people would be buying those. But now we see that there is the opportunity, and I would personally encourage staff to keep marketing those properties, and let's keep getting homes built, and let's keep getting property onto the tax rolls. We'll have a stronger, healthier community for that. Councillor Lewis.
One question. I've heard that this property's been on the market for a number of years. Is it currently posted for sale?
I'm going to ask Clint to address how it's been marketed.
Yes, Clint Dameron, Urban Development Department. Yes, the property has been marketed for sale since 2007, at which time back then it was listed at the appraised price of just over $100,000. After 4 years with little to no offer, we, at council's direction, removed the asking price and just made it an open bid, which is where it's been for 5 or 6 years. Kind of sparing interest here and there, and this is the first serious interest we've had that has gotten past the pre-application stage.
And actually, maybe I didn't make myself clear, is the actual site, does it have a for sale sign on it?
It does not. It's marketed on the city's website and through an internet service.
Councillor Dickey and then Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. So I guess it's more of a comment than a question, and Councillor Lewis sort of started down the road. I was thinking, you know, when because I've had a number of these in my ward, these little pieces of property that have, sometimes they come up and some of them have sold, and neighborhood leadership changes, so people forget. And if there's not something obvious or some way to remind the neighborhood, hey, this is for sale, you never know where your champion's going to come from. Could come right from the neighborhood, say, this is my neighborhood, I'm going to buy this and invest in my very own neighborhood. If there's a way, even a for sale sign on a lot, I know I can think of a couple in my area that there is a for sale sign, or there have been in the past, you know, for sale, contact, you know, urban development or something like that, that kind of reminds people. So I don't know if there's a way to do that, just to help people remember, hey, this isn't just a free, like you said, this isn't just a free piece of property that you can use forever and ever. This is what's happening with it, so people can, neighborhoods can plan around it. I mean, it's great that they can use it for now, and maybe there is a champion who wants to purchase the property who comes from the neighborhood, but just a way to make sure people are aware, because it's easy to forget when something's been on the market for 10 years or 15 years or something like that, and you know, your neighborhood leaders come and go, or even if it's the same neighborhood leaders, you might have had a report 10 years ago that said, hey, here's all the available properties for sale by the city in your neighborhood, and then you know, 7 years later they're like, well, what happened? Why is this property being sold? Why weren't we told about it? Well, you know, you got a report 7 years ago. Don't you remember? You know, and it's easy. So I don't know if there's just a way to make sure that people are aware of that. It may be as simple as a for sale sign, or it might be just a report that goes to the neighborhoods once a year or something like that. So.
Other comments? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. And follow up to what Councillor Dickey said before I make my points. I think, Clint, you said that it was 5 or 6 years ago that the council gave instructions to market it with, best offer sort of market. And, you know, the same thing happens to council, with the exception of Councillor Nanke and maybe Councillor Bennett. I don't know that any of us were here at that point, so that's sort of along the same lines. I want to back up for a minute to when we had our work session earlier today. We talked with the Planning Commissioner candidate, and one of the questions, budget, I'm sorry, budget, I made that mistake before. I've been away from the last two council meetings, so it's taken me a while to get back into speed. You may be lucky for that, but we talked with Ms. Nordyke about the importance of process, and she spoke very eloquently to that. And process, to talk about it in legal terms, is due process, and due process means two things: notice and an opportunity to be heard. And that doesn't mean that after you have notice and your opportunity to be heard, that what you want to have happen is going to happen. But, you know, because that's our responsibility as the counselors to give people notice and to listen to what they have to say. We may decide for good reasons that we don't want to do what they want to do, but at least they've had their notice and the opportunity to be heard. And it just seems to me that this was lacking a bit in this situation. And I appreciate very much that Mr. Fahlman was here, and it sounds like this is a potentially very good development and important development, but this is the first time the neighborhood even knew about that. So with that in mind, I'm going to move to postpone this for 2 months and give the developer and the city staff to meet with the neighborhood group before we discuss it, before we make a decision on it.
I don't hear a second.
I don't either.
Dies for lack of a second. All right, we are back to, all right, Councilor Benjamin?
Well, I just wanted to mention that this may be the second or third time that something of this nature has gone through process, through staff. And I was under the impression the first time I made this same comment that if somebody's going to make a development of some sort, probably should touch with the neighborhood association first up, and that the city staff will mention, we would love to give you a permit, we'd love to take you through the process, fill out your paperwork, and by the way, this is the neighborhood association you might want to go shake hands with, and we'll get things started for you.
That's part of the
Good idea. Councilor McCoy, followed by Councilor Nance.
If we're going to talk about process, I guess I'm going to say, my understanding of the typical process is if a developer buys a piece of land, he goes into pre-development, then he goes into development, it goes to the Planning Commission, the neighborhood association then gets notice that this land has been purchased and here's what they want to do with it, and they have their input at that point. So I'm not sure why the staff here is getting beat up a little bit about process, because I think right now we're at the first step of that process. Yes, it's in pre-development, it has not gone through the planning process, at which point the neighborhood associations do get notice. So I'm not sure I'm in agreement with some of these statements.
Councilor Nanke, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. And planning staff does have that in their box that they give to people, and it's like, but there's not a lot there right now. And again, it's to buy a piece of property. We get kind of spoiled, I think, sometimes when you look at like the Fairview property, and it's like this gargantuan purchase and sale agreement with master plans, everything that goes circle around 3 or 4 times versus, you know, something small. That being said, I think we should have all of those parcels posted for sale, and that gets back to where we've had some issues on state property out at the Mill Creek Corporate Center, where one of their signs had blown down, and it remained down and just looked atrocious for months upon months. And then we had the same complaints against the city of Salem when it was a future City of Salem Park, and the signs, you know, faded out to where you could hardly read them anymore as well. Just to say that if we sign them, we need to maintain the signs as well. But yeah, people need to know that this is marketed. It's depending on what you're going to use it for. If it's just green space, if it's a community garden, it's not like a park. Because if it's a community garden, not everybody can play in it. Only those people who choose to take their quadrant. So I think it's a great thing in the interim, but that's not even to guarantee that you will always make it through to harvest season before somebody buys it either. So we need to make sure that everyone's aware of that risk that goes along with that as well. All your time and effort and everything else.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I'd like to make a point with regard to the neighborhood associations and their desire to know about the properties. You know, it's an old saying, but the telephone lines run both ways. And every neighborhood association, it seems, has a land use chair. And there are regular reports that they could pull by checking in with urban development about property that is for sale in their ward. They could pull the reports of the hazardous and derelict and dangerous buildings. I get those reports every month. They could pull those reports, and they could be, you know, on those properties and making something happen on those properties. I think that to assume that a neighborhood association has the right and the luxury to sit back and be notified by anyone who's looking to buy property in their neighborhood association that they're going to come and buy property is puts an onerous responsibility on the people purchasing the property. If the neighborhood association wants to know, they should set up a system and they could access the information. That's the way I think it needs to work. Councilor McCoy.
How many properties of this type does the city own?
Other than the 2 Liberty parcel properties we talked about tonight and the new West Salem lot that's going surplus hopefully later on, we have one other site, an agency site. It's 15155 Silverton Road, a little triangle piece behind Zamora Auto. We have one other piece that currently has a ground lease on it on Portland Road at Pine Street, and that is it.
All right.
So 5. 5 and what's
Where
good.
we have the guy that set up a little business.
Yeah, we have a permanent a lease with the food trailer.
The only thing I could think of is, and I just came up, Mayor, because you talked about the derelict properties. Maybe there's a city-owned property list that goes out, you know, that you're trying to sell. You just put them down. It goes out once a month to make sure the neighborhood associations are aware of it and we're aware of it. I might just solve it that way.
We'll keep trying to get rid of it.
All right, so we have a motion, I believe, on the floor, and that motion is to
Staff recommendation.
authorize the city manager to execute the purchase and sale agreement with Brandon Fahlman. Am I saying his name right?
Pretty close.
Pretty cool.
For property located at 4333 Liberty Road South. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All right. Motion carries with 1 nay vote, 1 no vote registered by Councilor Anderson. All right, we're going to move now to item 3.3E by Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. I'm going to move that we approve the transfer as laid out in the staff report for Exhibit 3.3A, with the exception of removing McKinley Park from the trade, and at the then that with the attendant changes in the acreage that is in the end of this agreement as to who pays who what for the difference in the acreage swap.
Okay.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Anderson and seconded by Councilor Dickey to authorize the city manager to execute the attached intergovernmental agreement with Salem-Keizer School District, with the exception of the property known as McKinley Park. Is that a correct way to say what you just said?
I think
Okay.
that's all we really need to say. The staff will then have to make the adjustments at the end of this to make sure it all comes out correctly.
Right. Okay, so it's moved by Councilor Anderson and seconded by
Councilor Dickey.
Councilor Dickey. Councilor Anderson, did you want to speak to your motion?
Well, not too much, because we've heard a lot of testimony. I just want to say that you know, there's 10 or 12 or there's a lot of properties here, and only 2 of them really have elicited some strong reaction from the neighborhood groups, this one and Inglewood Park. And since McKinley is in my ward, that's what I'm really concerned with now. And there's just a long history of the neighborhood involvement in McKinley Park. I'm not so much concerned about, that concerns me more, that the long history here with the neighborhood involvement with McKinley Park. And I note that Mr. Wolf said nobody will be able to tell the difference, and I think you can turn that around 180 degrees. Nobody will be able to tell the difference from the school district side when that park is, if that park is still in the city. So I think this is, we've heard some strong testimony on it, and we've had some strong written testimony on it too. So I think this is the proper way to go. And we're talking about 1.1 or 2 acres out of, a lot of acreage here.
Yeah, 1.04, yeah. All right, is there further discussion? Councilor Lewis, followed by Councilor McCoy, and then Councilor Bednarz.
Okay, yeah, I have a procedural question, if I could. Are we allowed at this time to ask questions of the school district, or are we past that?
We don't have a public hearing, so
We're not at a public hearing, so we're not actually allowed to do that. Is that right?
ask questions. You can start by questions of staff.
Waive our rules to do whatever we want to do.
We'll start with Councilor Lewis, if we started with questions of staff.
Well,
Let me check something out.
I just think we weren't at a public hearing, and so Mr. Wolf can certainly, you could ask questions of Mr. Wolf. You may also have questions of staff as well.
Okay, but by asking questions from the school board, putting the school district in any sort of tenuous situation.
I don't know, that Mr. Wolf may.
So we will be able to ask questions of Mr. Wolf if he's willing. And Councilor Lewis, did you have some specific questions?
Yes, I do.
All right. Mr. Wolf, are you willing?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much. And I do appreciate your patience as well. I know it's getting to be a long evening. Okay, Councilor Lewis?
Yeah, I have probably a few questions. Let's see if I can get to the first one. When I was listening to the testimony earlier this evening, the Inglewood Park argument made sense to me because we're talking about a forest, and I don't see a wooded area conducive for students. And so I wanted to know the importance of Inglewood transferring to the school district, and why would you want a wooded area?
That's a great question. Actually, we're looking at the playground equipment, and that's really was the focus of our conversations. And so there happen to be trees around the playground equipment. It's a pretty unique, excuse me, it's a pretty unique situation. The site is quite beautiful, as it was described. We have no intention of, in this transaction, doing anything with the trees. I mean, that was never part of the discussion, and we certainly understand the importance of the canopy there and also the importance of the white oaks. We've gone through this process with the city at our Straub and Calapooya sites when we built schools, and so we certainly understand the sensitivity of those types of trees. So our focus is the kids use that now, and so that is part of the recess playground, except that we don't own it. And so that was really the intent of that piece of this swap was if we can own that piece of the playground, then we can maintain it appropriately.
Next question, McKinley Park, keep going back to, you said, people aren't going to know the difference, who owns what. What we heard tonight is there's a lot of folks that just can't accept that. They don't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So from a school district standpoint, what is the importance and how much is it for the McKinley Park piece?
Yeah, great question. There's been a lot of really good testimony on that particular parcel as well. And for us, it really, when we look at that piece of acreage, it really does function during the day as part of the school site. That's the only field that those students have access to. And so even though there are signs that say it's really not open to the public during the day, we have, as a school district, we have no enforcement mechanism whatsoever when there are people that are using it at the same time that our kids are using it. And so that's an issue for us, and it would be, I mean, I understand all of the work that's gone into the park and the relationship with the neighborhood, and I think that's incredibly important. But I just wanted council to know that when we have kids out on the playground and they're using the field, we have no mechanism whatsoever to manage their safety because we don't own that piece of property. And that won't change if it stays as a park. And some may say, well, there really aren't any issues that you have to deal with, and I can say that there are, and there will continue to be issues over time. And so that was part of the reason why McKinley was included in this swap. If we were siting a school on that land today, that field would be part of the district's property.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question. Oh, I'm so sorry. Councilor McCoy.
Well,
you
if
had
you're
a
going to ask
question.
questions, I want to make an amendment to the motion.
Microphone.
I want to make an amendment to the motion, so you want me to do it now? You want to ask questions and come back to me? Which one?
Well, I wanted to...
Because we're already talking.
Okay, well, then I would move to amend Councilor Anderson's motion to also pull the Englewood 0.22 acres off the transaction.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilor McCoy and seconded by Councilor Dickey to include, to pull both the McKinley Elementary School Park site and the Englewood School 0.22 acres from the list of the swap. I'm not saying it probably.
So this is actually just an amendment,
Yes.
so.
Just for the 0.22 acres.
So the
I'm
amendment.
amending his motion.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have to vote on his separately, which
Yes.
is just the Englewood 0.22 acres.
Oh, you're doing just the Englewood?
Yeah, I'm just amending.
Not the
him.
McKinley?
Well, I already did the McKinley.
You did the McKinley,
Yeah.
but then what are you doing?
He's
now?
adding Englewood.
Adding it to add the
So we're
Englewood.
going to have a motion that is the McKinley property and the Englewood property?
The amendment's accepted.
Yeah, okay.
There's a motion to amend Counselor Anderson's motion. So Counselor McCoy moved to amend to include the Englewood property.
Okay, perfect. And that was seconded by Councilor Dickey. All right. And discussion, Councilor McCoy?
Well, two things. One, after listening to that and looking at the order, and frankly, the one lady who said 14% of the park in that area was going to go away, I was convinced anyway. But also, Councilor Bennett, who's there, asked me to make that motion on his behalf because he couldn't be here this evening. So it's a twofold thing. I would have made it anyway, but just so you know, Councilor Bennett asked me to do so.
Councilor Anderson?
Thanks.
And then-
I'm in favor of the amendment. In fact, I debated as to whether I should include it in my main motion, but I thought it was appropriate to separate them out, partly because there are different wards involved. But we had some pretty good testimony here tonight, too, and it's these two, Englewood and McKinley, are the only ones that have had a lot of neighborhood input and discussion and a lot of very good testimony. So I will vote for the amendment, and then I will vote for the motion as amended.
All right. I saw Councilor Dickey and then Councilor Bednarz.
So just generally, I'm supporting both of these, obviously, because I seconded them both. But, you know, I think generally what we're doing is a good thing in terms of trying to straighten up all the boundary issues between the school and us, and, you know, why is part of Sprague's softball or, you know, baseball field part of the city? That doesn't even make sense. And I'm thinking too a little bit about McKinley. It's like, well, I guess, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. Was it the school or the park? Or, the school wasn't built with the park. I'm not sure about that, but we sure heard some really compelling testimony from the public tonight about how much they love their neighborhood parks. And I know that just through the years here in Salem, and this is, I think it has to do with change in leadership, change in policy, whether it's the city side or the school side. I've seen changes certainly in my area where we used to be able to access the tennis courts at McKay High School. We can't do that anymore. Chemeketa doesn't allow us to park at their tennis courts anymore. So where we used to have tennis courts in North Salem by use of other jurisdictions, now we have to drive to Bush Park to use tennis courts or some other places. So these things happen, they change, they come and go. Another thing that I can remember happening many, many years ago was we used to have a sort of a modified year-round school schedule. So you used to be, when you had little tiny kids, you could take them to the park in the summer, and suddenly one summer you couldn't do that anymore because the schools were in session. And so, where do you go if you've got, a neighborhood park versus a school park? So, there are compelling reasons in certain areas, I think, to do this, and I think these two make a whole lot of sense. I wasn't aware of the history of Englewood until tonight, so I really appreciated the people who spoke about that. But I think generally, I think this is a good way to go. We're meeting the need, we're fixing the boundaries, and we're also able to work with the neighborhoods who have had significant concerns and ownership of their neighborhood parks.
Councilor Van Mars?
So I'm not so quick to make my mind up until I have at least one more bit of information, and I don't know if our staff would have it. More likely you will. And it has to do with, as I've been thumbing through, you've probably been watching me going back and forth through all these, and I'm trying to figure out which schools actually have a playground and which schools use the park as their playground. And I'm kind of seeing here, I'm just going through every single one, and I don't know the schools that well. My kids went to Candelaria, and I went to West Salem Elementary, and it's gone. So I'm just, does Englewood have a playground aside from the park?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
No, they don't have a field aside from the park.
But where the playground is isn't really a field anyway. I see a grassy area from the map that everybody else has here.
Yeah. No, when we say playground, we're not just talking playground equipment. We're talking the fields as part of the site for the kiddos.
Okay.
Yes.
So, but it is a wooded area. It's not one where they're going to be throwing a football.
Exactly.
Most likely, it's just going to play on the. And I had on the Highland School, there's a triangle missing along the railroad track out of the part of the. Does that not belong to the city, or is that why we're not giving it to you? It's a weird cookie.
Railroad property.
Okay.
And that'll never get transferred.
It'll never get done. I mean, the rest of these I'm looking, that's going through the track field. McKinley, I come to this conclusion. I understand the public testimony and the angst we have tonight, but McKinley doesn't really have a playground except for the park. I mean, it has a small field, or does it?
No, I mean Now, when you say playground, you mean playground equipment?
Where kids would play.
Or a field that you can play in. Yeah, because we have playground equipment at McKinley that's on district property. Absolutely.
It's underneath the trees. It's been a while since I've been there. I used to play ball on that field. But
yeah.
And the rest of these, I mean, they have playgrounds. If we're giving you the land, we're selling you the land, trading you the land, you have existing playgrounds at those sites. That's what I'm trying to ask. Because if you don't, it makes sense that the land that's next to it would be the playground.
Yeah, no, there are unique sites throughout the district. A lot of our older sites, a lot of our older schools like Englewood, Highland, Richmond, McKinley, don't have, the site wasn't developed like we would develop it today. Like Richmond doesn't have a field. That's city property behind it. Englewood doesn't have a field. It's a forest behind it. And we're not trying to solve all those problems.
Okay, I think you've answered my question. It just basically was, I'm trying to figure out what makes sense next to the school.
Sure.
If there is no playground, it makes sense to move it on. But if there is a playground, then. The other question might be, and I think we talked about this before amongst the council, was, as an example, we were talking about SPIF grants being used, and this might be more for staff, but SPIF grants being used if it were a school property as opposed to a public property. And I think the answer that I got back about that was, yes, we could still use SPIF grants because SPIF grants are a matter of city policy, which can change.
Mark Bickle, Public Works Operations Manager. Well, yes and no. Under the current policy, SPIF grants would be put out for city property, for city parks. But the SPIF program is a city program, and so council could direct us to modify the rules of our own program. So currently, it's just city-owned property or city parks. You as council could direct us to do otherwise.
Okay, and then there were other funding mechanisms that was given in the testimony may or may not be able to be funding projects within, say, McKinley Park as an example, if it went away and went to the school.
Well, that's correct, Councilor. There are some funding grant programs. I think Mr. Christensen listed them. There's the federal land and water program. There's state lottery funds which come through the local government grant program through the state. They would all have to be park property for those to be eligible. Some of these small little parks, I don't know how much we would be going after those larger state and federal grants, but just given their size and the fact that they're already developed. But you are correct, if they have to be park property to be eligible.
We're not talking that much land, so as it is, the district is going to get less land than the city of Salem. This would make the difference even greater if we did this, but not by much.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Counselor, if I may answer that, I did the math. It's $94,500 that we would owe the district if McKinley and Englewood are taken out of the deal.
Cool.
Councillor Benjamin, and then we're going to have an extension of time, but I'll do Councillor Benjamin's question.
I'll try to get the first motions out of here first.
So some of a question, if children playing on city property, because the school district is using it, were to get injured, would the city be liable at some point, like it's go for whole or go for whole or something like that?
I'd defer to council on that one, to be honest with you.
It's in the courts right now, too.
I think that obviously each case would be looked at.
Yeah, it's on its individual merits. I mean, who was responsible for getting hurt? Was it this no supervision, or was it because there was nobody looking to see that there was a hole dug in the middle of the night? I mean, who knows?
Right.
The other scenario would be if there was some surly individual walking around smoking a cigarette and talking to himself, and the children are out there playing, and a teacher of some sort or custodian asked him, hey, you got to get off the property. He says, it's not your property. Well, it's not going to stop anybody.
No, that's true.
Okay, so, asked him to leave. He said, hey, I don't have to leave. This is city property. I'm sure you could call the police, and the police could come out, and they could make a judgment call at that point and say, well, you have to leave. There's children out here. But then would there be a lawsuit on that end, whereas this patron was kicked off city property?
Again, I wouldn't even begin to try and take that one on, but what I would say is if we felt that there was a safety threat, we would go into a lockdown situation, pull all the kiddos off of the field, get them out of the area, and secure the building.
Okay.
Yeah, we would know how to take care of the kids.
Okay. And it kind of is twofold. You answered my question. You do have a process for that.
Yeah.
So, and I got to defer to council to find out what the legalities are on that in our exposure.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councillor McCoy, could we entertain a motion to extend, please?
Until 10:10.
Is that going to take care of the polls that we have ahead of us?
No more comment.
How many more motions do we have to deal
We
with?
have 2 readings and a motion.
Is that it?
Yeah.
All right, 10:10. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Bednarz, to extend the meeting until 10:10 p.m. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay.
Yay.
Motion carries with one no vote by Councilor Nanki. Thank you very much. All right, we are back to discussion regarding the Salem-Keizer schools and the city of Salem and the swapping out of land back and forth. So we have a motion, we had a motion, and then we had an amended motion, an amendment to the motion. All right, so we'll vote on the amendment to the motion, and the amendment to the motion is?
To add, taking the Englewood property off of the transaction to Councilor Bennett's motion, or Councilor Anderson's motion.
All right. Is there any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. That motion carries unanimously. And now we vote. Do we need to vote on the original?
underlying motion.
As amended.
All right. We
The
need to
amended
vote on the original motion. You call it the underlying motion?
No, I
at this
call it the
point?
amended motion.
The amended motion.
Or the original motion as amended.
Either works.
Exactly. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time and your patience to stay and really work through this with us.
You bet. We appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we have another item that is pulled. No, are we all done? Are we done with all the polls? My goodness.
Otherwise,
We just amaze ourselves, don't we, sometimes? All right. In your, on your agenda, you see information reports, several of the information reports. I encourage counselors to take a look at those. If you have any questions about them, we can raise those with staff now. All right. Then we will move on to ordinances. We have a first reading. Would the city recorder please introduce 16-235?
Ordinance Bill 1316, an ordinance relating to ethics for public officials, amending Salem Revised Code sections 12.052, .070, and 12.090, repealing Salem Revised Code sections 12.100, 110, 120, 130, and 140.
Thank you. Is there a motion? No, not with Councilor McCoy away. There he is.
You wanted to do it mobile.
He was beaming it in. Councilor McCoy, we are at first reading, item 7.1A. Do you
I
have
move the
a
staff
motion
recommendation.
to recommend? All right. And who seconded it?
I got it this time.
You did. All right. Moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Nanki. All those in favor? Oh, is there discussion?
Don't we have to have a roll call?
Nope, not at first.
No. All right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And we have another first reading. Would the city recorder please introduce 16-276?
Ordinance Bill 1516, an ordinance relating to a change in the Salem Area Comprehensive Plan map designation for 4318 Lone Oak Road Southeast.
Councilor McCoy, excuse me, do you have a motion?
Sure,
for
I
us?
move the staff recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Bednarz to move the staff recommendation. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We have no second readings, and we have no public comment at this point. We did it earlier in the evening. We have no new business or mayor's items, but we have a councilor's item. Councilor Dickey, I believe you have a motion?
I do. I move that city staff prepare a report comparing city council member compensation in Oregon cities comparable to Salem, and if information is easily available, such as through the League of Oregon Cities, that all Oregon cities be included in the report.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Dickey and seconded by Councilor Bednarz for a study of city council compensation.
Benjamin.
I'm sorry, Benjamin, I am so sorry. By Councilor Benjamin, city council compensation in comparable Oregon cities. Councilor Dickey.
Yes, thank you. I will be brief. So, well, first I'll start with a very short story that when I was in college, I went to Western Oregon, so it was a state school. And I held an elected position in student government, and I got paid minimum wage for 10 hours a week. And so it was, and I had my own office. And so, I mean, that was even many, many years ago, is a lot more than I'm making doing this.
It's been downhill ever since.
It's been downhill ever since. Actually, counselor compensation has been something that's come up a lot during my term. And when Counselor Tessler and I went to Washington, D.C. a couple years ago for the National League of Cities, she quizzed every city councilor she could find. How much do you get compensated? What do you get compensated? And it was interesting. But in talking with other council members, learning, I mean, we don't even get mileage here for going to council-related events. And so, and it seemed like there was kind of a range. There were some that get paid by the meeting, some get mileage, some get, it just depended up to, in some it's more than others. And so it sure seems like it's a good opportunity to find out what's going on in other cities. And since I'm going off the council, it's nothing that would benefit me anyway. So I thought I'd bring it forward now, and we can take a look and see.
Good. I think it's a good idea. Councilor Nanke, followed by Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this has come up before the council in years gone by. And if I could just take a big jump back, when I started, we used to get $49 a month as a stipend for mileage, for driving back and forth and what have you. And then the state says, no, you can't do that. You have to declare it as income. And so we got rid of it. But that still left that window open. And you can turn in an expense report on a monthly basis for mileage back and forth to neighborhood meetings and coming from wherever to City Hall for meetings at lunch.
You can?
Yes, sirree. Not a counselor has done it since we got rid of the stipend.
Not a counselor has been told they can.
I've never been instructed that mileage, I have been told my mileage within the city is my expense, and mileage outside the city, 40 miles or greater, is reimbursed.
Peter's writing notes. No, at that time it was, no, you can turn in an expense report on, but no counselor ever did, and that probably never got passed on. But, if we're going on trips out wherever, we do that. But other than that, you get into the argument as far as whether pay has some reason why one sits here, and we went through that years ago as well, because some jurisdictions do pay, but I don't think they can just pay you a stipend that way without it being taxable, which is why Salem elected to get rid of that piece of it way back then.
Yeah, that's what we need to find out.
Well, and
I think Councilor Anderson.
I'll vote against it just because I think we need to be here for sake of civic duty. Others might have different opinions of that, but I'm not fussed either way on it.
Councilor Anderson and then Councilor Bednarz.
I'll be very brief. I went to the National League of Cities this year, and that topic came up. Some I asked people, other people asked me, and they were flabbergasted that there was nothing that we were paid. And I talked to a guy from a little podunk city in North Carolina who got like $200 a meeting, and I said, well, what are you talking about? He says, not much, dogs, etc.
They probably talk about how much they get paid.
Yeah. So I just think it's important to study that, and the comments that Councilor Nanke made, that's things that'll come out in the study and a later conversation. So we don't need to get into a discussion of why people serve or why they shouldn't serve tonight, but that'll be part of the task force.
There's going to be a task force?
A report.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, a report.
Thank you. All
Okay,
right.
the report,
Councilor
sorry.
Bednar.
So thank you. Madam Mayor, I have given this a lot of thought actually over the years. You couldn't pay me enough money to sit here and take the stuff that we get, and the hours we put in. And I mean, I've told people, and it's the God's honest truth. It's anywhere between 5 to 40 hours a week that you put in city council, and you miss a lot of evening and noon events, and that's precious family time. And I wouldn't mind knowing within the state of Oregon, yeah, but I could tell you what, if the vote is up to me, I'm probably going to say no at this point, because it clouds, in my mind, it clouds, we're already underneath ethics and other obligations. It just clouds, the money puts one more thing onto it. And I don't know if you could ever compensate a person enough money for the hours that they put in on their work in this in any council, but it's certainly a council with 165,000 people in our community. So I will support the motion. I'm just really reluctant to go down that road of compensation, that's all. Maybe look at this issue of compensating for, well, what do we get? We get meals if it's before 6 or during the lunch hour. We get a few perks, but that's very, very narrow.
Very, very few.
Yeah, they get a good deal with us.
All right, the motion on the floor has been seconded by
Benjamin.
Councilor Benjamin, thank you. Made by Councilor Dickey, seconded by Councilor Benjamin. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. How many no votes? Councilor Nanke and Councilor Lewis voted no. All right, thank you. All right, we have no further business to come before us. We are adjourned.
Yeah, and the motion way back when.